Chapter 1075. Lu Yi didn't act like before. Since he sensed that Lu Yueme was deliberately showing weakness, he naturally kept an eye out. He raised his saber and stabbed forward. The entire battle stage seemed to darken for a moment. Then, dazzling starlight fell, each of which was a sharp saber light. When the starlight fell, the protective spiritual light on Lu Yueme's body fluctuated violently and suddenly shattered. However, she had clearly expected this, so when this layer of protective spiritual light shattered, a different layer of protective spiritual light appeared. She had already used her second protective spiritual treasure. As the light was dense, strands of lightning suddenly swam from the surface of her body, turning into a huge ball of lightning in the blink of an eye. The ball of lightning suddenly exploded and spread out with lightning speed. In an instant, the area within a radius of 300 feet turned into a pool of lightning. Lightning interweaved within it like a swarm of dancing snakes. When he saw the lightning surging out of Lu Yueme's body, Lu Yi realized that something was wrong. In addition, he was prepared, so after stabbing out with his saber, he wanted to withdraw. However, no matter how fast he couldn't be faster than the lightning power. The pool of lightning spread out and drowned him. His entire body trembled like a sieve, and the mountain plate saber in his hand almost slipped out of his hand. He wanted to escape the range of the lightning pool, but under the corrosion of the lightning power, his body couldn't move smoothly. It was as if he had become a marionette, his movements stiff. The lethality of Lu Yueme's lightning pool secret technique this time was much weaker than before, but the constantly slithering lightning snakes were a huge hindrance to Lu Ye's movements, making him feel as if he had fallen into a swamp. The enemy was targeting him like this to limit his speed. What followed next would probably be a storm of attacks. However, when he looked up and saw the scene, Lu Yi couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Because Lu Yueme's current state was actually the same as his. Her movements were halting and halting, as if she was another marionette. Lu Yi immediately understood that this lightning pool secret technique not only affected him, but also Lu Yueme. No wonder she hadn't used it. This clearly wasn't because Lu Yueme's cultivation wasn't good enough, but because the secret technique itself was strange. Then, he saw a fierce glint in Lu Yueme's eyes. Immediately after, the power of her divine spirit fluctuated wildly. In his field of vision, Lu Yueme turned into a beam of light and rushed toward him at an incredible speed. She crashed into his head, and it was as if an invisible sledgehammer had smashed into his head. Lu Yi couldn't help but take a step back. Lu Yi hurriedly stabilized his body. His body sank slightly as he fixed himself in place. He finally knew what Lu Yueme wanted to do. This woman actually wanted to have a battle of souls with him. She'd obviously realized that if she were to continue fighting like that in the space of the combat arena, there was a high chance that she'd perish. Thus, she'd played to her strengths and avoided her weaknesses, and forced herself to fight it out with her soul. The lightning pool was only used to restrict her movements so that it would be easier for her to use her soul's secret technique. The figure of Lu Yueme that he had seen earlier was not her physical body, but her soul. That was why it had crashed into his mind. It had to be said that Lu Yueme had made an extremely wise choice and was extremely decisive. This was the shrewdness of a battle veteran. In a contest of physical strength, Lu Yueme couldn't gain the slightest advantage and was even at a disadvantage. If she continued fighting like this, her chances of winning were very small. Naturally, she wouldn't take this risk. Since she couldn't win in a physical contest, she would open up a battlefield with her soul. Her thinking was very simple. No matter how strong Lu Ye's foundation was, he was still just a second-order divine sea cultivator. She might not be able to crush Lu Yi with her physical body, but her soul shouldn't be a problem, right? This was the self-confidence of a seventh-order divine sea cultivator. Of course, making such a decision also showed her courage. Although there were clashes between divine sea realm cultivators, Such a direct battle between Divine Sea Realm cultivators was extremely rare. This was because such a battle was far more dangerous than a normal battle. A single mistake could cause damage to the Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Divine Sea Realm. As she expected, Luia's soul defense wasn't too strong, so it didn't take her much effort to break through it, and her soul rushed into Luia's soul sea. At a glance, she was slightly surprised because the scale of this soul sea was much larger than the second-order Divine Sea cultivators she knew. 1. Oh, what a monster! Not only is his physical foundation so strong, but his soul sea is also far superior to others in the same realm. Suppressing these distracting thoughts, Luiweme raised her hand and sent out a series of sharp attacks towards Lu Ye's soul sea. In an instant, the calm sea became calm and turbulent. Fighting a soul battle in someone else's soul sea had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage was that she could act unscrupulously, and any soul secret technique she used would damage her opponent's soul sea. The disadvantage was that her own soul couldn't be effectively replenished. On the other hand, because the enemy had the home field advantage, as long as their soul sea didn't break, they would have an endless supply of spiritual energy. Luiweme had cultivated for many years and had broken through to the Divine Sea realm many years ago. Although she hadn't experienced this kind of soul battle many times, she was still much more experienced than Lu Yi. As such, she immediately set out to destroy Lu Ye's soul sea. She knew that the fiercer her offensive was, the more difficult it would be for her opponent. While she was stirring up trouble, in the center of her soul sea, a soul avatar suddenly appeared. It was none other than Lu Yi, who had immersed himself in his soul avatar. As soon as he saw Luiweme's actions, he flew into a rage. In a flash, he rushed towards Luiweme. As he moved forward, his mind moved slightly, and pillars of water gushed out from his spirit sea and attacked Luiweme. That was the counterattack of his own spiritual power. Luiweme didn't have any intention of evading and simply continued to push her spiritual energy, turning it into a series of slashes that cut through the water pillars. Even Lu Ye's soul avatar was shaken by her attacks. If it weren't for the fact that he was in his home field and could easily replenish his soul avatar would likely have been shattered. This was the rhythm of a battle. Luiweme laughed sarcastically. Lu Yi, today you will die. 1. Lu Yi remained silent, his face gloomy. 1 inch his own home field. His enemy had actually dared to show off her strength like this. This was simply unjustifiable. Lu Yi felt as if a bandit had broken into his home, not only robbing him of his belongings but also taunting him. But there was nothing he could do about this. In the end, he had only reached the Divine Sea realm half a year ago and had never had the experience of fighting with another's soul avatar before. This was the first time he had experienced something like this, so it was a bit strange. Moreover, in such a battle, he couldn't display the full strength of his mortal body. He could only continue to rush towards Luiweme, at the same time mobilizing the strength of his divine sea to turn into massive waves that swept towards her, hoping to do something. Everything he did was useless. Whether it was himself or the massive waves of his divine sea, they were all intercepted by Luiweme. Although the situation was embarrassing, he didn't panic. This was because his divine sea had the soul pagoda suppressing it, so even if his spiritual energy was exhausted, his life wouldn't be in danger. Unless Luiweme had the ability to break through the soul pagoda and completely destroy his divine sea. But the soul pagoda was a soul artifact, so how could it be so easy to break through? Moreover, Luiweme was fighting an away battle, so there was no way for her to replenish her spiritual energy. Once her attacks weakened, this crisis would be resolved. But this kind of battle really made him feel aggrieved. In the end, he was a weapon cultivator. Fighting with his bare hands like this, he really had no place to use his strength. At this moment, if only he had a saber in his hand. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Yi suddenly thought of something and his figure that was rushing towards Lu Yueme stopped in place. Lu Yueme sensed this and raised her hand, sending many slashes towards Lu Ye's soul avatar. But along the way, she was blocked by layers of water curtains, so she couldn't use her full strength. These layers of water curtains were all manifestations of spiritual energy. Every time a layer was broken, it meant that Lu Ye's spiritual energy was consumed. Once the consumption was too great, it would be extremely disadvantageous for Lu Yi. As they attacked and defended, Lu Yueme suddenly felt a sense of unease in her heart, but where this feeling came from was vague. L10 And now that she was in the middle of a fight, she didn't have time to think too much. The spiritual energy slashes were endless, breaking through layer after layer of water curtains. Then, Lu Yueme keenly sensed that something was not very coordinated. The new layer of water curtains that rose closest to her actually took the initiative to separate from the left and right. The next moment, Lu Ye's soul avatar rushed out. Lu Yueme coldly snorted and instantly sent out spiritual energy slashes, one after another, with an aggressive momentum. She had dealt with Lu Ye's soul avatar in this way just now. Every time, Lu Yi was beaten so badly that he could only dodge. However, this time, Lu Yi was different from his usual self and didn't dodge. Saber light suddenly swept out, breaking all of Lu Yueme's spiritual energy slashes. Where did this saber light come from? Lu Yueme was startled, and when she looked over, she couldn't be more shocked. It was because Lu Ye was holding a saber in his hand at this moment, and that saber looked so familiar. It was his magic weapon saber. How could a magic weapon saber be brought into the Divine Sea? Or was the magic weapon saber itself a soul weapon? But this was too ridiculous. A magic weapon was a magic weapon, and a soul weapon was a soul weapon. It was impossible to mix them up. Many thoughts flashed through Lu Yueme's mind, but she really couldn't understand how to explain the change in front of her. Of course she was confused, because the saber in Lu Ye's hand wasn't the Pan Shan saber. Although the Pan Shan saber was a top-grade magic weapon, it couldn't be brought into the Divine Sea. Lu Yi was holding the soul-severing saber. However, because of the soul-severing saber's uniqueness, it transformed into the Pan Shan saber's appearance. To Lu Yi, this was the saber he was most familiar with and could maximize his strength as much as possible. Just now, he was lamenting that he didn't have a saber in his hand, and then he thought of the soul-severing saber. However, as soon as he obtained the soul-severing saber, he fused it with the Pan Shan saber, resulting in the upgrade of the Pan Shan saber. Thus, he had a misconception and didn't think of bringing the soul-severing saber into the Divine Sea. Since this idea had arisen, after a little testing, he smoothly brought the soul-severing saber into the Divine Sea. Please enter the latest update in your browser and view it in the Essence Library. To provide you with the latest update of Great God Momo's Human Tao Great Sage, please save your bookmark so that you can read the latest update in the future. Chapter 1075. Soul-Severing Saber Soul Strife is free to read. Chapter 1076. Now that he had this saber in hand, Lu Yi felt that his whole body had mellowed, and he was no longer as powerless as before. Being on his Divine Sea Realm's home turf, Lu Ye's soul body arrived in front of Lu Yueme almost instantly. Before Lu Yueme had time to recover from the shock on her face, a saber light slashed towards her. In a hurry, she could only push her strength to protect herself. She had cultivated a soul secret technique, so she had both offensive and defensive means. The external manifestation of this was a barrier in front of her. As the saber fell, the barrier burst like a bubble. Lu Yueme's face changed drastically as she finally determined that the saber in Lu Ye's hand was a soul artifact, and an extremely good one at that. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for it to cause such obvious damage to her soul defense. Clenching her teeth, Lu Yueme was filled with unwillingness. Her strategy had not been wrong. Unable to gain the upper hand in terms of physical strength, she had even fallen into a disadvantage, so she could only compete with her soul. It turned out that her soul was indeed much stronger than Lu Ye's. But she never expected that Lu Ye, a second-order divine sea cultivator, would have such a powerful soul artifact. That was a soul artifact. Even she, a seventh-order divine sea cultivator, did not have one. How could Lu Ye have one? But considering the heritage of Blue Blood sect and its current situation, it wasn't strange for Tang Yifeng to bestow a soul artifact to protect himself. She naturally attributed the origin of the soul-splitting saber to Blue Blood sect, which was also reasonable. With her soul defense broken, the soul-splitting saber still fell straight down. Lu Yueme hurriedly retreated, but the saber light was like a maggot in her bones, unable to escape. On top of that, this was Lu Ye's home turf. In terms of speed, she couldn't be faster than Lu Yi, which was the biggest drawback of an away battle. The mountain-ascending saber struck Lu Yueme's soul body, causing her to scream, as if she had suffered great pain. At the same time, a soul attack also fell on Lu Ye's body. It was indeed very painful. His soul avatar immediately felt like it was being torn apart. There was no blood flowing out of the wound. After all, it was a soul avatar, so only spiritual energy was escaping through the wound. However, Lu Yi could replenish his spiritual energy at any time, so it only took a moment for his wounds to heal. Lu Yueme didn't have such convenience. Just as she recovered from the intense pain, Lu Yi once again raised her sword and slashed at her. Unable to defend or evade, Lu Yueme screamed even more miserably after being stabbed a second time. The pain in her soul was not something an ordinary person could endure. This time, Lu Yueme's instinctive counterattack was narrowly avoided by Lu Yi, leaving him unharmed. After being stabbed twice, Lu Yueme knew that she couldn't continue like this. She couldn't help but want to retreat. She wanted to escape. Lu Yi saw her actions, so how could she let her do as she pleased? She had inexplicably run into his spirit sea and run amok. Now that she had sensed that something was wrong, she wanted to escape. How could there be such a good thing in this world? He raised his hand and pressed it down. Then, he suddenly raised his hand and shouted, "Up!" The seawater below suddenly began to boil. Then, a tall tower rose into the air and hovered above the divine sea. Spurred on by Lu Ye's spiritual energy, the tower shook and suddenly expanded outwards. In the blink of an eye, the huge tower passed over Lu Yi and Lu Yueme and enveloped the entire divine sea, turning it into a cage. Lu Yueme slammed into the tower's wall and desperately discovered that she couldn't break through the tower's protection. In other words, she was trapped. Her eyes trembling violently, Lu Yueme stared at the huge tower that covered the entire divine sea, her heart filled with bitterness. Another soul artifact. And it was a defensive soul artifact. Blue Blood sect. Sure enough, even a dead tiger would not fall. It wasn't until this moment that she realized that she had made an extremely wrong choice. If she hadn't started a battle of souls and only fought Lu Yi with her spirit techniques, she might have had a chance to turn the tables, but when she decided to take the risk of starting a battle of souls, her fate was already sealed. She was also a treacherous little thief. He clearly had such a defensive soul artifact, but he didn't use it when she invaded his spirit sea, only activating it when she wanted to escape. If he had this tower to protect her when she tried to invade his spirit sea, she would never have succeeded. Lu Yueme had misunderstood Lu Yi. Although he had obtained the soul-suppressing tower for a long time, he was only at the true lake realm when he obtained it. Although he had a spiritual sense soul avatar, it was still different from a true spirit sea realm cultivator. He wasn't too clear about the full power of the soul-suppressing tower and only thought that it was used to suppress his spirit sea and protect it from being broken. This fierce battle with Lu Yueme allowed him to discover another ability of the soul-suppressing tower, which was to seal off his spirit sea. With the soul-suppressing tower as a cage and Lu Yi holding the saber in his hand, Lu Yueme knew that her chances of survival were slim and her panicked expression calmed down. Asterisk dong dong dong, A rhythmic sound rang out from the depths of her heart. She looked up and saw Lu Yi walking over step by step, neither fast nor slow. The thumping sound was the sound of his footsteps landing on the ground. Lu Yi raised the soul-severing saber and pointed it at Lu Yueme. Lu Yi calmly said, "Come, let's fight to the death." As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Yueme had already activated her spiritual energy slash. Lu Yi rushed forward, cutting off the numerous incoming attacks before slashing his saber down on Lu Yueme's soul body. Lu Yueme had been struck twice before, causing her to scream miserably, but now that she was in a desperate situation, she only let out a muffled groan and refused to cry out. In this battle, no matter what, only one person could survive, so any begging for mercy or showing weakness was meaningless. This had already been decided the moment Lu Yi summoned the battle stage. Although she knew that she could no longer control life and death, at the very least, she could allow herself to walk a little more calmly. In front of a young second-order divine sea cultivator, he had no choice but to lose face. Slash after slash, Lu Yueme's soul body continued to dim. By the time Lu Yi passed by her, Lu Yueme's originally solid soul body had become extremely illusory, like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any moment. She grit her teeth and uttered a final vicious curse. "Even if I become a ghost, I won't let you go." Her remaining strength fluctuated wildly, and her illusory soul body became unstable, showing signs of collapse. She would die, but she would never die at the hands of a junior like Lu Yi. Suicide was her last shred of face and perseverance. Lu Yi, who had his back to her, turned around and slashed his soul-splitting saber across her soul body's neck, causing a small crack to appear. Lu Yueme's expression suddenly twisted. She never expected that Lu Yi would not even leave her with this last shred of face. Her expression was vicious and she seemed to want to say something, but her soul body had already collapsed, turning into specks of light and disappearing. Lu Yi quietly looked in the direction she disappeared, not feeling the joy of killing a strong enemy. In the end, Lu Yueme and he were cultivators from the same camp, not to mention the same camp after 2 years in the blood-refining world. He didn't have much killing intent towards unrelated Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators. Why did they have to fight each other to the death? In the blood-refining world, there were many old seniors who came from different camps. They could peacefully coexist, persisting in their efforts towards a common goal, yet they never fought each other. Although he had such thoughts, he didn't agree with Tai Shan's ideas. In his opinion, Tai Shan's ideas were unreliable. How could a grudge that had persisted for thousands of years be resolved by creating a new camp? In this world, there might be many people like him who were tired of the endless struggle between the two camps. But, when one was involved, there were always many things that were beyond one's control. Of course, although killing Lu Yueme didn't bring him any joy, it didn't bring him any sorrow. This accidental encounter was originally a life-or-death struggle. It could only be said that this was a messy account. He came here this time to refine an avatar, but he ended up bumping into Lu Yueme. And after learning that Li Taibai was Lu Ye's avatar, Lu Yueme's killing intent rose. If others wanted to kill him, he would certainly fight back. He couldn't use his own life to help others. Since he wanted to fight back, he had to be thorough. So, he lived and Lu Yueme died. It was that simple. It could be considered as revenge for that day. Back when he went to Startling Waves Lake Pass to conscript third senior apprentice brother Xiao Xinghe, Lu Yueme chased after him without regard for her status. If he hadn't activated the Golden Body Medallion to protect her, she would have most likely died. Lu Yi remembered this debt. With a thought, Lu Yi hurriedly dispersed his consciousness. The next moment, his consciousness returned. The space of the battle stage was rapidly collapsing. Now that life and death had been determined, the space of the battle stage naturally couldn't be maintained. Lu Yueme was still standing nearby, but she was no longer breathing. Lu Yi hurriedly dispelled the beast transformation technique and shouted, "E." He flashed over and disappeared into Hu Po's body. Hu Po looked somewhat exhausted. This was the after effect of using beast transformation every time. Not to mention Hu Po, even Lu Yi himself had expended a great deal of energy. It wasn't just the consumption of his physical foundation, but also his spirit. However, as long as his foundation wasn't damaged, he could recover after a period of rest. The space collapsed. The next moment, Lu Yi appeared in the previous fissure. He frowned because he was surrounded by insectoids from all directions, and there was no lack of powerful divine sea realm insectoids among them. Before summoning the battle stage, Lu Yi had sensed the abnormality of the insectoids beneath the fissure. That was why he decisively summoned the battle stage, so that the insectoids wouldn't interfere with his battle with Lu Yueme. Now that the battle was over, although it hadn't been long, the number of insectoids swarming out was unusually large. As soon as he appeared, he was completely surrounded by insectoids. The insectoids with low intelligence naturally didn't expect a human to suddenly appear here. However, they didn't think too much about it and instinctively launched an attack on Lu Yi. Lu Yi brandished his saber and was about to break out of the encirclement. He had expended too much energy at the moment, so it wasn't suitable for him to stay here any longer. However, before he could do anything, a woman's voice came from afar. Li Tai-bai, where are you? Lin Yu had actually found him. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Check it in the Essence Library. Providing you with the latest update of Great God Momo's The Great Sage Human Race. In order for you to be able to check the latest update of this book next time, please keep your bookmark well. Chapter 1076. Battle Stage Lu Yueme's Death for free reading. Chapter 1077. Lin Yu wouldn't appear here for no reason. Since she could call out Li Tai-bai's name, she must have received some news. This wasn't surprising. When Lu Yi and Lu Yueme first fought in the fissure, the commotion was quite big. Otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted the attention of the underground insect race. If there were cultivators nearby, they should have noticed. Some Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators probably noticed the battle here and passed the news to Lin Yu. Lin Yu was worried about his safety, so she came to investigate. She was a thoughtful person, but facing Lu Yi was a bit awkward. He couldn't meet Lin Yu face to face. After all, they were on different sides. Should he fight or not? If it was under normal circumstances, he could just hide and wait for Lin Yu to leave. But now there were insect race cultivators everywhere, so he couldn't hide at all. He could only activate the 1000-face mask and transform into Li Tai-bai's appearance. During the fierce battle, he put on the Scarlet Dragon battle robe, hung the sword gourd on his waist, put away the mountain coiling saber, and put the amber into his spirit beast bag. After a series of actions, he was surrounded by insect race cultivators from all directions. Several divine sea realm insect race cultivators were eyeing him. With a flash of sword light, sword chi overflowed and cleared a large vacuum in an instant. Insect blood and severed limbs scattered everywhere. Lu Yi rushed up and rushed out of the fissure in a few breaths. Not far away, a figure was besieged by insect race cultivators. It was Lin Yu. Although she was a 7th-order divine sea realm cultivator, the same as Lu Yueme, the number and quality of the insect race cultivators that appeared this time were far greater than before. This was also the reason why she couldn't enter the fissure to search for Li Tai-bai. Fortunately, she could rely on her own cultivation to hold on. Hearing the sound of a sword, she turned her head and saw a familiar figure at a glance. She was overjoyed and called out, Li Tai-bai. Lu Yi greeted her and soon met up with her. Let's go, Lu Yi called out. He had consumed too much energy and didn't want to stay here and fight with the insect race. What he needed to do now was recover and adjust his breathing. Lin Yu followed his advice and the two immediately turned around and rushed towards the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Suddenly, they broke out of the encirclement. Many insect race cultivators behind them, but they were quickly shaken off. The path ahead was still blocked by insectoids, but they did not pose much of a threat. Flying through the air, Lu Yi looked down with a frown. All he could see were insectoids of various shapes and sizes. It could be said that this was a sizable insectoid tide, and there was still an endless stream of insectoids pouring out from the fissure he had escaped from, increasing the size of the insectoid tide. In the past 2 years in the 9 regions, there had been countless insect swarms of all sizes in various regions. They had all crawled out from different cracks in the ground. Moreover, the insect race was extremely sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations. Therefore, as long as they gathered into a tide, they would inevitably swarm towards the gathering place of the human race. Their current location was in the middle of the Dark Moon Forest Pass and the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. They were slightly closer to the Dark Moon Forest Pass. One could foresee that the insect tide would definitely cause a certain degree of impact to the 2 passes. What the cultivators at the 2 mountain passes had to do was to defend against the insectoid swarm and exterminate the insectoid. Lin Yu was already arranging for the cultivators of the Demon's Ridge to return. It was difficult for an individual to fight against such a large insect tide, even for cultivators of the Spirit Sea realm. They could only defend the mountain pass and rely on the fortifications there to resist the enemy. The Dark Moon Forest Pass had experienced this many times, so he knew how to deal with it. After sending out messages, Lin Yu finally had time to talk to Lu Yi. "Junior brother Tai Bai, were you fighting with Lu Yueme before?" Lu Yi knew that she would ask about the smoke and had already thought about it, so he replied, "That's right." There was no way to deny it. Within a radius of 1,000 kilometers, there were only 3 Spirit Sea realm cultivators. Some Demon's Ridge cultivators had already noticed the fluctuations of a battle between Spirit Sea realm cultivators and reported it to Lin Yu. Lin Yu was not a fool. She would not have come to find him. Moreover, Lu Yueme's death had to have a place. Lin Yu could not help but be shocked. Where is she? Just now, she only saw Lu Yi rushing out from the crack in the ground. There was no trace of Lu Yueme at all. "She's dead," Lu Yi said concisely. Lin Yu was even more shocked. Her expression changed. How did she die? It was not that she had any friendship with Lu Yueme, but they were both 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivators. Moreover, she was weaker than Lu Yueme. If there was any danger that could kill Lu Yueme, it could also take her life. She had to be careful. Lu Yi naturally would not say that he was the one who killed her. Not to mention whether Lin Yu would believe him or not, even if she did, there were many things that could not be explained. He simply said, "She was attacked by the insect race during the battle and died." In any case, Lu Yueme did die in the crack in the ground, and there were so many insect race cultivators. It was just right to push the blame to the insect race. In the past 2 years, there had been many Spirit Sea realm cultivators who had died at the hands of the insect race. There were many 8th or 9th order Divine Sea realm cultivators among them. There were also powerful existences among the insect race. Lin Yu could not help but feel a little absent-minded. Lin Yu had been guarding the Dark Moon Forest Pass for more than 10 years, and Lu Yueme had also been guarding the Shocking Waves Lake Pass for a long time. Both of them were female cultivators with similar age and strength. It could be said that they had crossed swords many times and regarded each other as their opponents. This was also the reason why the Myriad Demon Ridge had Lin Yu guard the Dark Moon Forest Pass, and Grand Heaven Alliance had Lu Yueme guard the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. The 2 women had crossed swords for many years, and it could be said that they knew each other well. With the 2 of them guarding one side, their camps could rest assured and there would not be any major mistakes. However, they did not expect that the opponent they had been entangled with for so many years would die just like that. Lin Yu suddenly felt a little emotional. She did not know the meaning of their rivalry all these years. On the way back, they did not see a single person. The Myriad Demon Ridge had received instructions from Lin Yu, so they naturally returned to the Dark Moon Forest Pass early and made preparations to guard the pass. On the walls of the pass, many defensive fortifications were ready. They were waiting for the insect race to attack, so that they could kill them all. Junior brother Tai Bai, you should rest first. I don't think the insect race will spread here within a day, Lin Yu said. The main reason was that she could sense that Lu Yi had expended a lot of energy. The battle was imminent, and he was the only divine ocean realm cultivator under him. Naturally, she had to take good care of him. Lu Yi did not say much and walked towards his residence. After entering, he sat down cross-legged and consumed a spiritual pill to recover his energy. Although he had no choice but to return to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, he had experienced it once before. Hence, it was not difficult for him to escape. He just had to find an opportunity. However, he had other worries, and that was whether or not the Shocking Waves Lake Pass would be able to block this bug tide. Lu Yueme was killed by him. The Shocking Waves Lake Pass could be said to be a group of dragons without a leader. More importantly, they probably did not know that their pass master was dead. Currently, there were only a few Cloud River Realm and True Lake Realm cultivators guarding the pass. If the scale of the insect race was too large, the Shocking Waves Lake Pass might not be able to hold on without a Divine Ocean Realm cultivator guarding it. Another point was that Lin Yu had sent a message to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, summoning all the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who were out and making preparations to guard the pass. However, there was no one at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass to remind them. Although he knew that the insect race was coming, he could not rush over to warn them. He could only hope that they would be able to detect it as soon as possible and deal with it as soon as possible. They were all accomplished cultivators and not children. There were many things that could not be completely relied on. Each of them should take responsibility. As time passed, Lu Yi slowly recovered. Suddenly, there was an intense wave of spiritual energy coming from outside, accompanied by a buzzing sound. The entire pass was shaking. Lu Yi hurriedly pushed open the door and rushed out. His body swayed and he flew to the top of the pass's wall. Looking up, his heart sank. In his vision, there were insect race figures everywhere. There were insects crawling on the ground and flying in the air. The scale of this insect race was much larger than he had imagined. The closest insectoids were only 1.5 kilometers away from the mountain pass. At this moment, the many fortifications on the mountain pass were unleashing their powers. Through the activation of the formations, attacks were launched toward the insectoids. Every time a vacuum was created, it would be quickly filled by new insectoid. Little Pass Master. A few cultivators saw him appear and bowed in unison. Lu Yi glanced over. Among them, Ing Wu Ji squeezed out a smile, feeling inexplicably nervous. Although this Little Pass Lord had been in the Dark Moon Forest Pass for more than 3 months and had interacted with him many times, Ing Wu Ji did not know why, but every time he saw this Little Pass Lord, he would feel a little flustered. The Little Pass Master had never made things difficult for him. Moreover, they were about the same age, and Ing Wu Ji was even older. He did not know where this invisible pressure came from. He could only attribute it to the pressure unique to the Spirit Sea realm. Go do what you need to do, Lu Yi said. The few people felt as if they had been pardoned and quickly worked together to activate the Spirit Array, activating the power of the Spirit Artifact placed in the Array Eye. Lin Yu flashed over and smiled. I haven't congratulated Junior Brother for reaching the Second Order. When she returned yesterday, she had noticed Lu Ye's breakthrough. However, she had been busy defending the Heart Pass, and did not have the time to mention it. It's only the Second Order, there is still a big gap between me and Senior Sister. Lu Yi nodded lightly. Lin Yu laughed. You've only been cultivating for a short time, yet you've already reached the Second Order Divine Sea Realm. I'm afraid that in a few years, your cultivation will surpass mine. When that time comes, don't despise Senior Sister for being stupid. Senior Sister, what are you saying? Ing Wu Ji and the others were busy with the task at hand, so the conversation between the two Spirit Sea Realm cultivators went into their ears. What does Senior Sister think about this insect tide? Lu Yi changed the topic. The scale is very large, it can be said to be the largest insect tide we've encountered in the past 2 years. Lin Yu's expression became serious. If the mountain pass was at its peak, it wouldn't be difficult to stop this insect tide. However, Junior Brother also knows that many people in the mountain pass have been transferred away. Not only the Dark Moon Forest Pass, but also the other mountain passes of both camp. Therefore, if we want to stop this insect tide, we have to work together. Most importantly, they had to find a way to kill the spirit sea realm insects in the insect tide in order to reduce the pressure on the pass. I understand, Lu Yi nodded. Lin Yu hesitated. Actually, I'm not too worried about our side, I'm more worried about Shocking Waves Lake Pass right now. This site's latest domain name. Chapter 1078. This kind of thing would never happen in the past. The two camps were opposing each other with deep hatred. The more unlucky the enemy was, the happier they would be. However, times had changed. There was actually a day where they had to worry about the enemy's situation. Life was unpredictable. The two mountain passes were 500 kilometers apart from each other, which was equivalent to 2 bright lamps in the wilderness. The insects were attracted to them like moths to a flame. If one of the lamps was extinguished, the other lamp would have to bear a lot of pressure. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the relationship between them would be interdependent if the lips were gone. Lin Yu was also worried about what Lu Yi was worried about. She did not know if the Shocking Waves Lake Pass had discovered Lu Yume's death. She did not know if they had sent a message to ask for help. The situation was completely different when there was a Spirit Sea Realm warrior guarding a mountain pass, and when there was no Spirit Sea Realm warrior guarding it. Lu Yi was now disguised as Li Taibai, a cultivator of the Wanmo Ridge. He naturally could not sit crooked. He said, "Everyone has their own business. Senior sister, don't worry too much. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance are not children. If the situation is bad, they will ask for help." "I hope so." Lin Yu nodded slightly. While the Dark Moon Forest Pass was being attacked by a large number of insectoids, the Startling Waves Lake Pass was also experiencing the same thing. The fissure was located in the center of the two passes. The insectoids came out in 2 batches, one headed north to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, while the other headed south to the Startling Waves Lake Pass. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass did not receive any warning, but their reaction was not slow. When they realized that it was a large-scale insect tribe, they sent a message to everyone and returned to the mountain pass early to prepare for defense. They each performed their own duties and were ready for battle. However, the cultivators at the mountain pass soon realized awkwardly that their leader was nowhere to be seen. They could not get any reply even when they tried to send a message with the guard token. When a cultivator from the Sky Yuan sect checked the battlefield mark, he was shocked to find that Lu Yume's mark had disappeared. The leader was dead. No one knew how she died, and no one knew where she died. The only thing that was certain was that she had died in the past 2 days, because just 2 days ago, someone had seen Lu Yume's figure at the mouth of the mountain pass. The cultivators of the Sky Yuan sect were deeply grieved. The current situation did not allow them to be too sad. They could only hurriedly send a message to their superiors. While reporting Lu Yume's death, they also reported that the pass was about to be attacked by the insect swarm. Shocking Waves Lake Pass belonged to Heaven's Gate, one of the 12 gates of the War Province. When Heaven's Gate received the news, they were also shocked. After verifying Lu Yume's mark, they confirmed that she was really dead. They could only find a way to dispatch a 6th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator from nearby to rush to Shocking Waves Lake Pass and take over Lu Yume's position as Pass Master. It was under such circumstances that Chen Xiao came to Shocking Waves Lake. It wasn't that the Haotian Alliance didn't want to send more warriors of the Spirit Sea Realm. It was just that they were short of manpower and couldn't send more warriors of the Spirit Sea Realm in a short period of time. It wasn't easy to find a 6th-order master. A sixth-order divine sea realm cultivator was not a low cultivation. When Yang Kai arrived at Shocking Waves Lake Pass, the insect race had besieged it. Looking from a distance, the entire mountain pass was no longer visible, and what entered his field of vision was a sea of insects of all shapes and sizes. Yang Kai used his thunder technique to clear a path through the swarm of insects and rushed toward Shocking Waves Lake Pass with great momentum. The insect race didn't have any probing when they attacked. They acted based on instinct and went all out as soon as they attacked. They didn't have any strategy and relied on numbers to win. Thousands of miles away, at the two mountain passes of the two camps of the Hautian Alliance and Myriad Demon Ridge, a great battle broke out almost at the same time. The many fortifications at the mountain passes constantly released their power and killed countless insects. At the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lu Yi and Lin Yu also killed their way out of the mountain pass several times. They killed the spirit sea realm insects in the swarm to reduce the pressure on their side. After fighting for half an hour, Lu Yi rushed out again. The sword chi in his sword gourd was rampant and turned into elegant swords that could take lives and souls. None of the insects below the spirit sea realm could withstand his attack. Those sword lights seemed to have a mind of their own. They shuttled back and forth in the swarm, reaping the lives of the insectoids. All of a sudden, they gathered in one place and slashed down. Every time this happened, a divine sea realm insectoid would be killed. Lin Yu stood on the city wall of the mountain pass. She was recovering her spirit energy while watching quietly. She was amazed. She had encountered quite a few sword cultivators. Every single one of them was the most orthodox sword cultivator with unparalleled killing intent. This was the characteristic of sword cultivators. However, very few sword cultivators could reach Lu Ye's level. While he killed with an iron fist, he gave off a pleasant feeling. He didn't seem to be killing enemies, but using his sword as a pen. This was the first time Lin Yu saw Li Taibai's true strength. Although Li Taibai had been at the mountain pass for more than 3 months, the two had never fought side by side. In the past, they took turns to go out every time. She didn't know how Li Taibai killed enemies. Until today, she was completely sure that Li Taibai still had the ability to kill enemies above his level, just like his performance when he was in the True Lake realm. She couldn't help but wonder if she should ask her martial niece, Tong Shuyao, to come back to the mountain pass. Her martial niece was quite pretty. If she could marry Li Taibai, it would be a good story. If that happened, Li Taibai would really be on her side. But soon, she gave up on the idea. If Li Taibai was still in the True Lake realm, it might be possible. However, he was in the Spirit Sea realm now and had a bright future. No matter how pretty her martial niece was, how attractive could she be to him? For the past 3 months, many female cultivators in the mountain pass had shown great interest in the new young pass master. They wanted to get close to him, either intentionally or unintentionally. However, there was no news of him getting close to any of the female cultivators. He didn't even tell anyone about it. He talked. This kind of person looked easy to get along with, but deep down, he was extremely arrogant. Not to mention her martial niece, even if she offered herself, she might not be able to move him. All kinds of strange thoughts flashed through her mind. Suddenly, Lin Yu's expression changed. She shouted, "Martial brother Taibai, come back!" Li Taibai was so excited that he went deep into the swarm of insects. At this moment, there was only a lot of sword chi wreaking havoc in the swarm of insects. Everywhere it passed, insect corpses fell like raindrops. Li Taibai was nowhere to be seen. There was no response. In the blink of an eye, even the light of the sword chi could not be seen. Lin Yu's expression changed slightly. She wanted to help, but she could not act rashly. She was the backbone of the mountain pass. Even if something happened to Li Taibai, as long as she was there, the mountain pass would not be in chaos. However, if she and Li Taibai were to be trapped, it would be troublesome. Time ticked by. After half a cup of tea's time, the sword light that looked like a waterfall reappeared in her field of vision. Lin Yu took a long breath, and her towering chest heaved up and down. He was finally back. The sword dragon spun like a top, tearing a hole in the dense swarm of insects. Soon, it broke out of the encirclement and landed beside Lin Yu. The sword chi retracted, revealing Li Tai Bai. Lin Yu scolded, "Junior brother, how could you be so reckless? You really scared me to death." Lu Yi laughed. "I was too excited to kill. I made senior sister worry. There can't be a next time." Lin Yu looked at him sadly. She had dragged a strong man from the wild to help her, and she was very satisfied with this man's strength. In the past 3 months, he had taken a lot of pressure off her. If he died in the swarm, how could she find such a good helper in the future? There won't be a next time. Lu Yi kept nodding. There won't be a next time. Lu Yi kept nodding. Lin Yu realized that her expression was not right, so she quickly adjusted her expression. "Junior brother, stay here. I'll go kill some insect." With that, she rushed out of the mountain pass. She did not go too deep. It was not that she was timid, but as the leader of the mountain pass, she had to consider the safety of the entire mountain pass. She could not act recklessly like Li Tai Bai, so she limited herself to 300 meters away from the mountain pass and looked for the stronger insects to kill. On the city wall of the mountain pass, Lu Ye's doppelganger took out 2 top-grade spirit stones and held them in his hands to replenish his energy. There was no other way. The real body had the talent tree to burn the impurities and replenish his energy by taking a lot of spirit pellet. However, the doppelganger could not do that. Although the doppelganger had a piece of the talent tree's root, it did not have any fuel. It could only use spirit stones to replenish its energy and maintain the purity of its spiritual energy so that it would not affect its strength. At this moment, Lu Ye's real body was flying across the sky toward the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. He was still a bit worried. Of course, he also wanted to take this opportunity to get away from the Dark Moon Lin Yu, which was something he had planned for a long time. The insectoids were very strong. This time, the scale of the swarm was not small, mainly because of the number of Spirit Sea Realm insectoids. Li Tai Bai and Lin Yu were guarding the Dark Moon Forest Pass, so it was not a big problem. However, if the same effort was put on the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, the pass without Spirit Sea Realm warriors might not be able to withstand the swarm. 1,000 miles was nothing for Lu Yi at this moment. He kept moving forward and soon arrived at a place 100 miles away from the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Looking from afar, Lu Yi frowned. There were obviously more insectoids at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, and the swarm was larger. This might be the scale of the swarm itself, or it might be the result of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass's defense being weak. Did the Hautian Alliance not send any Spirit Sea Realm warriors? No matter how tight their manpower was, they should have sent a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator over since the pass was attacked. Looking at the time, the Hautian Alliance should have known about Lu Yueme's death. He sighed in his heart. In the end, he still had to clean up the mess he had caused. This was the cycle of the heavenly Tao, and retribution was not pleasant. He did not regret killing Lu Yueme at all. In that situation, one of them had to die. Even if he did not want to fight to the death, Lu Yueme would not let him go. However, if other cultivators of the Hautian Alliance were involved, Lu Yi would feel bad. He could even defend the Dark Moon Forest Pass with all his might, let alone the Shocking Waves Lake Pass of the Hautian Alliance. Lu Yi took out Hu Pu from the spiritual beast pouch and placed it on his shoulder. The aura of the master and the servant merged instantly, and he dashed toward the Shocking Waves Lake Pass quickly. The latest domain name of this site was 1. Chapter 1079. When they were 10 miles away from the swarm, the insects on the periphery turned to face them. Lu Yi rushed all the way. His divine sea realm aura and spiritual energy fluctuation were obvious. He had no intention of hiding at all. The insects, who were extremely sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations, were naturally attracted like moths to a lamp. Yi flashed out of Hu Po's body and followed closely beside Lu Yi. She took the lead to activate her technique and attacked the insects in front of her. Lu Yi didn't release his power. He closed the distance a little and then waved his saber. Streaks of sharp saber light slashed forward like crescent moons. Wherever it passed, the insectoids were sliced in half. The incisions were clean and smooth, and the insectoids' blood and corpses spilled out. Hu Po also roared on Lu Ye's shoulder. Every tiger roar contained a strange power, which slowed down the movements of many insects and made their bodies stiff. As early as at the spirit stream realm, Hu Po had shown the ability to suppress the soul. Its tiger roar could often cause a certain degree of impact on the enemy's mind. Now, it was also a demonic commander-level monster, which was equivalent to the true lake realm of the human race. The tiger roar's power was naturally stronger. Facing a divine sea realm master like Lu Yueme, the tiger roar had no effect. But facing these insects with low intelligence, the tiger roar's power was undoubtedly displayed. A human, a spirit, and a tiger. After 3 years, they joined forces again. Wherever they passed, insects fell like raindrops. In just a few miles of confrontation, countless insects died. Lu Yi led Yi and crashed into the dense swarm of insects, killing in all directions. On the city wall of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, a figure was sitting. His aura was as weak as a candle flame. It was Chun Xiao, who was ordered to come to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. 2 hours ago, he was still high-spirited, but now he was gasping for breath. His injury was too serious. The left half of his body was almost missing. The squirming internal organs in his abdomen could be clearly seen. From the jagged marks on the edge of the wound, he seemed to have been bitten by something. With such a serious injury, he was destined not to live for long. He held on and didn't die because he reported the situation to Heaven's Gate and asked them to send more powerful divine sea realm masters. But the feedback he got was hopeless. The Heaven's Gate asked him to hold on for another 2 hours, because even if they were transferred, it would take some time for the warriors of the spirit sea realm to arrive. 2 hours. Chun Xiao smiled bitterly. Not to mention 2 hours, in his current situation, he wouldn't even be able to last for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. While he was communicating with his superiors, Chun Xiao suddenly raised his head. His eyes, which were so dim that they were about to be annihilated, suddenly brightened up. His lips, which were as white as paper due to excessive blood loss, moved slightly. "What's that sound?" Beside Chun Xiao, a medical practitioner was desperately circulating her spiritual energy to treat his injuries. Her slender figure wanted nothing more than to squeeze out all of her spiritual energy, but it was of no help to Chun Xiao's injuries. Bean-sized tears silently rolled down her cheeks. Hearing Chun Xiao's question, the medical practitioner said, "My lord, you must hold on." As for sounds, she could only hear the flapping of the insectoids' wings and the squirming of their mouth. Chun Xiao shook his head. "There's a sound." His eyes brightened. "It's a tiger's roar. Someone's coming." Demonic beasts wouldn't come here for no reason, but that was indeed a tiger's roar. In other words, it should be a cultivator from the beast tamer school. However, he did not know how many people there were and how strong they were. "Quick, alert the others. There's a big insect in the insect swarm." A big insect did not refer to its size, but its strength. Only an insectoid that was comparable to a 7th-order divine sea cultivator or above would be called a big insect. This was the tacit understanding that the cultivators of the 9 states had accumulated over the past 2 years of fighting against the insect plague. There was a big insect in the insect swarm that besieged Shocking Waves Lake Pass. He had suffered a loss at the hands of a big insect. In the fierce battle, his protective spirit energy was broken and half of his body was bitten off. If not for the fact that he was very close to the pass at that time and had many cultivators at the pass to help him, he would have lost his life on the spot. Under normal circumstances, a human with similar strength would be able to deal with an insectoid swarm. This was because human cultivators had all kinds of methods, while the insectoids relied on their instincts. No matter how weak a cultivator's foundation was, it would not be a problem for them to fight 2 or even 3 insectoids at once. The key point was that there were many big insects in this insect swarm. Not only were there comparable to a 7th-order divine sea cultivator, there were even some comparable to an 8th-order divine sea cultivator. He had already suffered a great loss, so naturally, he did not want others to follow in his footsteps. The medical cultivator beside him hurriedly urged her spirit energy and shouted, "Be careful, there are many big insects in this insect swarm." Although she tried her best to shout, her voice was still drowned out by the sound of the many insectoids flapping their wings. It was unknown whether the newcomer heard her or not. Louis heard her, but there was no room for him to evade. At this moment, he had charged into the insect swarm and was surrounded by insectoids from all directions. In particular, there were a dozen or so insectoids with fierce auras that brought him great pressure. These dozen or so insectoids should be canine insectoid. At first glance, they looked like canines. They had 4 limbs and short tails, but their bodies were covered in thick carapaces that provided them with strong protection. Liu Ye's saber light slashed at them, destroying ordinary insectoids, but to these canine insectoids, it was like scratching an itch. Their mouths were like those of crocodiles with sharp teeth. If one was accidentally bitten, it would not end well. The dozen or so hound insects formed a semicircle and surrounded Liu Yi, their powerful and fierce auras instantly allowing Liu Yi to perceive their existence. There were too many of them. Even Liu Yi did not dare to face them head-on. He could only leap up and rush upwards, looking for an opportunity to break through. The hound insects followed. In terms of speed, they were far inferior to Liu Yi. If it was a normal escape, Liu Yi could easily shake them off. Hound insects were not known for their speed, but being surrounded by them, Liu Yi could not move at full speed. No matter which direction he fled in, there would be a large number of insectoids blocking his way. With a crackle of the mountain saber, he forcibly carved out a path of blood. The dozen or so insectoids were getting closer and closer. The leading insectoids had already opened their bloody mouths and were biting at him. Seeing that there was no way to escape, Liu Yi could only push his spirit energy. With him as the center, an invisible force suddenly spread out and turned into an attack. The insectoids around him all stiffened as if they had been struck by lightning. Even the hound insects were no exception. Using spiritual energy to deal with the insect race was the fastest way to achieve result. The insect race was not intelligent, which meant that their spiritual energy was weak. Therefore, spiritual sea realm cultivators of the human race could easily suppress the insect race's spiritual energy. However, this method could not be used too often. After all, spirit energy was limited even for divine sea realm cultivators. Moreover, replenishing it was not as convenient as replenishing spirit energy. Once too much was consumed, it was easy to fall into a state of dispirited state. While the insectoid stiffened, Liu Yi waved the mountain saber in his hand and growled, "E." Even though they had not seen each other for a few years, their minds were still connected. Yi quickly flashed back into Hu Po's body to hide. In an instant, the surrounding space darkened as if a bright moon had risen. The cold moonlight scattered, and the dense moonlight bloomed wantonly like iron flowers. The second style of the tyrant blade, crescent moon. This was the most suitable blade technique to be used when surrounded. Thud, thud, thud. The area around Liu Yi within a radius of 300 feet was almost cleared out, and it was unknown how many insectoids had died. Only the hound insects remained unscathed. They were strong enough, and the carapace on their backs provided a thick layer of protection. Even if the crescent moon's blade struck them, it only left a mark on their carapace. However, with the huge impact, the hound insects were still beaten down. They quickly stabilized themselves and pounced at Lu Yi again. However, after Lu Yi used Crescent Moon, he quickly turned around and rushed down toward the mountain pass. The path ahead was blocked. Lu Yi swung his saber to open a path. Hupo's tiger roar shook the sky. The man and tiger cooperated with each other skillfully. In the shocking waves lake, many cultivators looked in the direction of the source of the commotion. They were all extremely nervous. With Chen Zhao's example, everyone was worried about the newcomer. They did not know if he could successfully break through. The huge insectoid swarm suddenly began to wriggle. It was as if salt had been sprinkled into a pot of hot oil. Immediately after, a saber ray slashed out from the wriggling area. Following closely behind the saber ray was a flickering figure. Chen Xiao quickly said, "Quickly open the formation." There was no need for him to give any orders. The cultivator in charge of the defensive formation immediately activated the jade pendant in his hand and opened a hole in the formation in the direction of the newcomer. Lu Yi entered in a flash, and the hole closed up again. The insectoids behind him were isolated outside, and they were drowned in attacks. After charging into Shocking Wave Lake, Lu Yi released and withdrew his divine sense, and he roughly understood the situation here. The situation here was much worse than the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Many cultivators were injured or killed, and there were many insectoid corpses left on the city wall. It was obvious that the insectoids had broken through the defensive line more than once, but they were all blocked by the cultivators here. In comparison, the Dark Moon Forest Pass's defense was obviously more stable. At the very least, the insectoids had not broken through the defensive line there. There were two reasons for this situation. First, the insectoids here were stronger, and second, there were no masters here. On the Dark Moon Forest Pass, there were two Spirit Sea Realm cultivators, Li Tai-bai and Lin Yu. They took turns to kill the enemy, greatly reducing the pressure on the pass's defense. There were no such conditions here. However, there was the aura of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Lu Yi came to Chen Zhao's side and looked at his tragic injuries. He cupped his fists and saluted. Law Division's Lu Yi greets senior brother. Chen Zhao looked behind Lu Yi, as if he was expecting something. Lu Yi understood and said, "I was alone. I was passing by and noticed something was wrong, so I came to take a look. Junior brother Lu is considerate." Chen Zhao sighed slightly. "It must have been hard for you to rush in. Didn't you encounter those insects?" Lu Ye's cultivation was only at the second-order Spirit Sea Realm, far inferior to Chen Zhao. If he had really encountered those insects, he would not have been lucky. Chapter 1080. "I ran fast," Lu Yi explained. "Your luck is not bad." Chen Zhao did not suspect anything. In his opinion, Lu Ye's luck was indeed good to be able to charge in alive. Unfortunately, he was so unlucky to be surrounded by those giant insects and suffered such heavy injuries. Taking a few deep breaths, Chen Zhao's voice became weak. "Jade Blood Sex Lu Ye, I've heard of you. I hope you can continue to be so lucky. I've already asked for help, but you should understand the current situation. Even with the State Guard's background, it's not that easy to find suitable people. Guanyi ordered me to hold on for 2 hours, but I can't do it. Can I entrust the defense of Shocking Waves Lake Pass to you? No matter what, you have to protect the pass for 2 hours." Lu Yi wanted to say a few words of consolation, but when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he swallowed them back. Chen Zhao knew his injuries better than anyone else, so there was no need for him to lie to himself and others. With a serious expression, he said, "I will do my best." "Good." Chen Zhao nodded. "Then I'll leave it to you." When he finished speaking, his spiritual energy suddenly dissipated. His head slowly drooped, his eyes dark. The medical cultivator beside him was still desperately urging her spiritual energy to maintain his vitality, but how could it be effective? Chen Zhao was able to hold on until now only because of the last breath in his heart. Now that Lu Yi had come, although not satisfactory, he was still a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. After handing over the task of guarding Shocking Waves Lake Pass, he could not hold on anymore. "Don't waste your energy," Lu Yi said. The medical cultivator wiped the tears from her eyes. Even though she had seen many deaths since she embarked on the path of cultivation, every time someone died in front of her, she hated her own incompetence. Many medical cultivators would go through this psychological process. They were the people who could see life and death the most. From the initial feeling of not being able to bear it, to gradually numb to seeing life and death, this was the growth of medical cultivators. The attack and defense continued. On the walls of the pass, many fortifications let out a buzzing roar. Powerful attacks struck the insect swarm. Lu Yi looked around and met the gazes of many Shocking Waves Lake Pass cultivators. He keenly sensed the low morale. It was inevitable. Lu Yueme, the original pass master, had lost her life for some unknown reason, which was enough to make people uneasy. Then there was the insect swarm. Finally, a warrior at the Spirit Sea realm came to support them. However, the moment he arrived, he was severely injured. His life was worse than death. Now, he had gone with Lu Yueme. Although Gu Lu Yi had arrived, Lu Ye's cultivation was only a trivial second-order divine sea realm cultivator. Even the sixth-order Chen Xiao had no room to play, so what could a second-order cultivator do in this situation? The entire Shocking Waves Lake Pass had lost its backbone from the very beginning. If it weren't for the daily training and the tacit cooperation of everyone, the pass would have fallen long ago in the face of such a scale of insect tide. The prospects were not optimistic, so it was natural for morale to be low. If it was possible, breaking out of the encirclement and escaping was a good idea. After all, there were no mortals living here. Even if the insectoids took over the mountain pass, there would not be too many losses. As long as the soldiers at the mountain pass were alive, they would be able to kill their way back. However, in the current situation, it was impossible to break through. The insect horde had surrounded the entire mountain pass. If they really did that, how many of them would survive? The best time to break through was when the insect horde had surrounded the mountain pass, and they had already missed it. What a mess! Lu Yi sighed in his heart. But in the end, this mess was related to him. If Lu Yueme was still alive, she would be here when the insect swarm arrived. The situation at the mountain pass would not be so bad. No matter what, Lu Yueme was still strong. But this woman just had to court death. As their eyes met, Lu Yi spoke slowly. "I have been entrusted with this task. I, Lu Yi, am also a member of the State Guard. Since this is a chance encounter, I cannot refuse. Today, I will defend the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. I hope everyone can work together with me to slay the insectoids and protect the mountain pass." "Please give the order, sir." A true Lake Realm cultivator cupped his fists. "Please give the order, sir." Everyone shouted in unison. "None of you are children. There is no need for me to say what you should do in this situation. Do what you did before. I am not more proficient in defending the mountain pass than any of you. I only have one order, and that is to ensure that the defensive line does not break." Hearing this, many soldiers heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that Lu Yi would really take over the mountain pass's defensive line and carelessly give out orders, ruining their rhythm and arrangement. These days there were many armchair strategists, especially when Lu Yi was so young. He was younger than all the true Lake Realm cultivators present. It was inevitable that he would have some problems with grandiose achievement. Fortunately, although he is young, he still has some self-awareness. "Sir, the insect swarm is fierce. If there were no Spirit Sea Realm insectoids, the mountain pass's defense could still hold on. But there are many Spirit Sea Realm insectoids in the swarm, and there is also a big insect." A bearded man spoke. This person was a true Lake Realm 9th Order cultivator, only a step away from the Spirit Sea Realm. Obviously, he had some status in the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. His opinion basically represented the thoughts of the soldiers at the mountain pass. Lu Yi glanced at him and said, "What's your name?" the bearded man said in a sonorous voice. Yu Huang. Lu Yi nodded. I will leave the mountain pass to you. As for the spirit sea realm insectoids outside. He turned around and faced the insect swarm. He raised his hand and summoned something. I will kill them. When the last word fell, he pushed his spirit energy, and the thing that was the size of a baby's head suddenly split into countless tiny scale fragments. Under the guidance of Lu Ye's own aura, these scale fragments climbed onto his body as if they had a mind of their own. Crackling sounds of explosions rang out continuously, and at the same time, an extremely berserk aura rose and fell. Red light flashed and an invisible wave of chi swept out in all directions. The impact caused everyone on the city wall to lose their footing and squint their eyes. When Yu Huang and the others looked over again, they were all stunned. It was because the place where Lu Yi was originally standing had been replaced by a tall scarlet figure. The figure was tall and slender, with sharp edges and corners all over its body. Its appearance was ferocious. Its surface was covered with many profound and complicated patterns. The crisscrossing patterns extended from its cheeks to its entire body. The colors were gorgeous and intertwined to form an extremely wild totem. The tall figure just stood there quietly. Obviously, it did not move at all, but it was still filled with an endless violent aura. It was as if an ancient vicious beast that had been imprisoned for countless years had just broken free. An invisible pressure filled the air. Even a true Lake Realm Ninth Order cultivator like Yu Huang could not help but sweat on his forehead. With the sudden appearance of a huge saber, the already ferocious aura became even more violent and unparalleled. Not far from Lu Yi, the medical cultivator who treated Chen Zhao's injuries just now let out a cry and took a dozen steps back. Yan Jia. Yu Huang stared blankly at the huge figure that suddenly appeared. He recognized what it was at a glance. There was the Yanshi school in the 9 continents. He had interacted with them before. However, the cultivators of the Yanshi school were the same as the cultivators of the Beast Tamer school. They had always been in an awkward position. Whether they were strong or not depended entirely on the creations and monster beasts they controlled. Most of the time, the cultivators of the Yanshi school and the Beast Tamer school took on the role of pathfinders in complicated and unknown environments. This was because even if their creations and monster beasts were lost, it would not cause any direct damage to the cultivators. He never thought that there would be such a set of Yan Jia in this world. Just by simply wearing it on the body, it could raise a person's aura to such a violent degree. Was this still a fake armor? While he was still in shock, the scarlet figure had already rushed out. It swept past the light screen of the defensive array and crashed into the dense swarm of insects. Its speed was so fast that even a peak true lake stage cultivator like him could not see it clearly. He only saw 2 scarlet streams of light dragging out from the child's eyes. The tall figure waved the huge saber. With a simple slash, a crack appeared in the airtight swarm of insects. Immediately after, the figure charged in. In an instant, countless lives were lost. All the cultivators who saw this scene were stunned. For a moment, the defense of the mountain pass was interrupted. The originally dense attacks became sparse. Fortunately, the swarm was attracted by Lu Yi and did not take the opportunity to attack. Otherwise, the defense line might really be broken. At that time, there would be many more casualties. Don't be in a daze. Everyone move. Yu Huang shouted angrily. The many shocked soldiers seemed to have woken up from a dream and hurriedly carried out their duties. They did not know whether they could survive the siege of the insect swarm this time. They also did not know whether they could last until the reinforcements from Heaven's Gate arrived. However, they knew what they should do, especially after Lu Yi brazenly killed his way into the swarm of insects alone. Others who were just passing by could give up their lives like this. How could they, the soldiers of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, fall behind others? It was nothing more than people living in the pass. If the pass was broken, people would die. The originally low morale suddenly soared. It had to be said that the leader taking the lead was the best way to stimulate morale. In this kind of situation, no matter how extravagant one's words were, it was not as meaningful as actual actions. Lu Yi did not know how to bewitch people's hearts, nor did he know how to control them. He did not have such thoughts. All the choices he made were forced by the situation and also because of his heart. Wearing the dragon throne was too suitable for this kind of battlefield. There was no need to deliberately search for the enemy's traces. It was just a simple swing of the sword. Every swing would have a result. On the contrary, a one-on-one battle like with Lu Yueme was actually not very suitable for the dragon throne. This was also the reason why he did not use the dragon throne when he fought with Lu Yueme previously. It was not only because he had already activated the blood-stained spiritual tattoos and the beast transformation secret technique. After wearing the dragon throne, the whole person's vision increased a lot. When facing a single target, the strength of the dragon throne could not be fully displayed. This thing was completely used to deal with a large-scale siege. With the strength of one person, fighting against enemies from all sides. Wherever the dragon ridge blade fell, even the divine sea realm insects were as fragile as paper. Chapter 1081. The insect swarm was wreaking havoc. Amidst the swarm of insects, the tall scarlet figure dashed around like a wolf, constantly waving his dragon spine saber, slashing out huge blood-red saber waves one after another. The insects around him were constantly cleared out, only to be replaced by more. The cycle repeated itself. The insectoids were not afraid of death. Many insectoids would bite their prey as hard as they could before they died, or they would activate their unique abilities. There were all kinds of abilities, such as the spider-like insectoids that spat out spider silk, and the ant-like insectoids that spat out corrosive mucus. In an instant, the scene boiled over. Dense sounds constantly came from the Dragon Emperor. In just a few moments, the scarlet armor had turned colorful. On the Dragon Emperor, Lu Yi spread out his divine sense, probing for the auras of divine sea realm insects in the swarm. Whenever he sensed them, he would kill them. Although the insectoid swarm was massive, the divine sea realm insectoids were the ones that posed the greatest threat to the defense line at the mountain pass. He was alone, after all. Even with the Dragon Emperor, it was impossible for him to kill all of the insectoid. Therefore, he had to try his best to get rid of the high-level insectoids to reduce the pressure at the mountain pass, especially the dozen or so insects he encountered on his way here. If he couldn't take care of them, no matter how many insects he killed, it would be useless. In such a battle, defense had become meaningless because Dragon Emperor was being attacked from all directions at every moment. Even if she wanted to defend, she could not do so. He could only attack, keep attacking, and firmly grasp the initiative in his hands. Before he ran out of strength, he had to kill as many insects as possible. His foundation was rapidly draining away. During the confrontation, Lu Yi felt like he had turned into a dilapidated house, leaking air everywhere. Looking at his several trump cards, the blood-red spirit inscriptions consumed the least energy, followed by the beast transformation secret technique. The most energy-consuming was the Dragon Emperor, because once he wore the Dragon Emperor, it was like countless needles that couldn't be seen with the naked eye were stabbing into his body, madly devouring his strength, including his spirit energy, vitality, and spiritual energy. This kind of devouring was omnidirectional and simply unstoppable. It was also the price he had to pay to wear the Dragon Emperor. The only thing that made Lu Yi feel fortunate was that he was now a second-order divine sea cultivator, so his foundation was much stronger than before, so he would be able to persist for much longer. The violent energy waves were like lights in the dark, attracting countless insectoids to swarm over like moths to a flame. In the midst of the fierce battle, Lu Yi suddenly turned to look in a certain direction. His field of vision was filled with all kinds of strange insectoids, but in that direction there were several powerful auras that were clearly not ordinary. It was those dogs. Ever since he had committed suicide and entered the swarm, he had been looking for traces of these hound bugs. Now that he had finally found them, he no longer hesitated. He waved his dragon spine saber and forcefully made an opening. In just 3 breaths, a few hound bugs mixed in with many other zergs came into view. They were not large in size, but they were extremely agile in this chaotic battlefield. Using the cover of other insectoids, they attempted to approach Lu Yi. However, Lu Yi had been paying attention to their tracks. How could he let them succeed so easily? The moment they saw each other, the dogs and insects seemed to realize that their whereabouts had been exposed. They roared in unison and pounced on Lu Yi from different directions. Lu Yi stared at the nearest hound bug and slashed down with his saber. The dragon's spine saber was shrouded in a red glow, like a red-hot iron. Under the unparalleled sharpness of the saber, everything with a sharp edge was cut in half. However, at this moment, more ferocious auras appeared behind and to the sides of Lu Yi. Under the cover of many insectoids, other hound bugs revealed themselves and surrounded Lu Yi, attacking together. Lu Yi was slightly startled. These hound bugs seemed to be a little different from ordinary insectoids. They actually knew how to cooperate with each other and hid themselves before they attacked. 1 inch a trance, Lu Yi felt like he had been ambushed by a pack of wolves. How were these hound bugs? It was more appropriate to call them wolf bugs. More than a dozen hound bugs above the 7th order divine sea realm attacked together. Even Lu Yi, who was wearing the dragon throne, did not dare to ignore them. The dragon throne's defense was truly amazing. After all, it was an armor refined from dragon scales. Since the beginning of the battle, countless insectoids had used various methods, but they had not been able to damage the dragon throne. They had only made its surface mottled, but that was at the cost of Lu Ye's own strength. In other words, all the attacks that hit the dragon throne would consume Lu Ye's strength. Wearing the dragon throne was also constantly consuming his strength. With such double consumption, even if Lu Yi was now a divine sea realm cultivator, he would not be able to last long. He could not let so many hound bugs attack him at the same time, otherwise, he would not be able to defend himself. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yi rushed towards the 3-headed hound bug in front of him like lightning. In the blink of an eye, they were engaged in close combat. He punched a hound bug that was pouncing at him, sending it flying. He then kicked out and sent a second hound bug flying. The dragon's spine saber slashed down to meet the 3rd hound bug. The huge saber turned into a blood-red arc and slashed at the back of the hound bug. The white bone carapace was immediately split open, and the saber was embedded in it. If it were any other insectoid, they would have been dismembered by such a saber strike, but these hound bugs' defense was obviously stronger than ordinary insectoids. The dragon's spine saber was unable to penetrate them completely. Lu Ye's spiritual energy surged wildly and was added to the saber. He roared angrily and dragged the saber down at the same time. An ear-piercing sound of friction rang out. The hound bug hissed in pain, its mouth parts squirming endlessly. Green blood spurted out. Its solid bone carapace was finally split open, and its small body was divided into 2 halves. Its aura was annihilated. Lu Yi did not have the slightest joy after his success, because many fierce auras around him and behind him were closing in. Bang bang bang. The hound bug's body slammed into the dragon throne and clung to it like a leech. Its mouth parts were densely packed with fangs, and it bit fiercely all over the dragon throne. Lu Yi only felt that his foundation was like a flood that broke through a dam at this moment. Even the dragon throne itself was making sounds of difficulty. He raised his hand and grabbed a hound bug that was biting his right arm. He aimed the dragon's spine saber at its constantly opening and closing mouthparts and stabbed straight at it. This hound bug obviously realized that something was wrong and struggled to resist. However, under Lu Ye's tight confinement, how could it break free? The huge saber pierced through the hound bug's mouth and out from its tail. With a vicious slash, half of its body was cut off. Louis raised his hand to grab another hound bug. However, to his surprise, after these hound bugs saw the tragic fate of their companions, they all retreated, allowing him to grab Smoky Air. They seemed to know that they could not be captured by Louis again, or else it would be a disaster. Louis's expression was solemn. He finally realized one thing. The intelligence of these hound bugs was much higher than ordinary insectoids. He did not know if all insectoids were like this, or if only these hound bugs had such ability, but their performance was indeed different from ordinary insectoids. 6. After a fierce battle and exhausting a great deal of his reserves, he had only managed to kill 2 of the hound bug. Louis was naturally dissatisfied. He immediately set his sights on the nearest hound bug and was just about to attack when suddenly, a violent aura approached from below. Louis hastily looked down and saw a huge, ferocious mouthpart rushing towards him. The mouthpart was as large as a house, and its interior was filled with crisscrossing fangs. It was a terrifying sight. He wanted to dodge, but he was surrounded by insectoids from all directions, so he could not dodge for a while. The next moment, the world darkened, and he could no longer see his surroundings. Louis was furious. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be swallowed into the stomach of an insectoid. That huge mouthpart should belong to a type of hound bug. He had seen it before, but although this type of hound bug was ferocious and terrifying, it had an obvious drawback, which was that it could not fly. They could only move on the ground, so Louis had ignored them all this time. However, this did not mean that they were helpless against enemies in the air. Because of their large size, they could instantly spring up and open their mouthparts to swallow the enemy in the air. That was how Louis fell into this trap. Not only was he swallowed, but many insectoids around him were also swallowed. The feeling of being squeezed came from all directions, and an extremely corrosive force enveloped the Dragon Emperor. The space was narrow, and it was inconvenient for him to wield his saber. If it were an ordinary armament cultivator being swallowed like this, it would be difficult for him to escape. If he was trapped for a long time, he would either be squeezed to death or corroded to death. However, Louis was not only proficient in the methods of armament cultivators. As his spiritual power fluctuated, the mysterious yin and yang quickly outlined and merged. In the blink of an eye, a fiery red spiritual power egg was formed, and the eggshell broke. Along with the clear cry of a phoenix, a fire phoenix broke out of the shell. A scorching force burned in all directions, and sizzling sounds could be heard continuously. Soon, a big hole was burned in the hound bug's abdomen, and it broke free. Its fiery red wings spread out, and a huge creature with a wingspan of dozens of feet appeared with a bang. If an outsider saw this scene, they would see that the tall Dragon Emperor seemed to have grown a pair of wings. Louis dragged his saber and cut open a huge gash on the worm's abdomen. He rushed straight up, and at the wound, the worm's internal organs tumbled out. When he once again soared into the air, and began to slaughter wantonly, on the ground, there was a glutinous worm whose stomach had been cut open. Its body was writhing madly as it struggled for its life. In the mountain pass, the formations buzzed. Many soldiers worked together to resist the waves of attacks from the insect swarm. Everyone was contributing their strength, especially the formation cultivators and refiners. They were constantly running around the city walls, repairing the formations that were damaged due to overload and replacing the spirit weapons and spirit treasures that were placed in the eye of the formations. The soldiers were keenly aware that the insectoids' attacks on the mountain pass had weakened significantly, and they were no longer as crazy as before. Moreover, the scale of the insect tide was clearly smaller than before. Naturally, they did not think that this was the insectoids being merciful. There was only one reason for such a change, and that was that one person had single-handedly killed his way into the insectoid swarm, diverting too much of the insectoids' attention and killing too many of them. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Dog Bug. Chapter 1082. Due to the insect swarm's concealment, the soldiers at the mountain pass couldn't see the battle taking place inside, so naturally, they didn't know what was going on inside. They could only feel violent energy fluctuations coming from inside, accompanied by the cries of phoenixes, and vaguely visible crimson rays of light being emitted from the insect swarm. Yu Huang moved through the various areas of the pass and took the initiative to assume the heavy responsibility of coordinating the defenses of the various areas of the pass, and he was extremely busy. At this moment of danger, the entire Shocking Wave Lakeside Pass was unprecedentedly united as one, and they went forward with all their might. Because everyone knew that if they were unable to overcome the calamity today, then what awaited them would surely be an extremely tragic end. Turning his head to look at the still dense insect tide, Yu Huang secretly hoped that Luye from Blue Blood sect would hold on. His actions had given hope to the soldiers at Shocking Waves Lake Pass, but in the end, he was only a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. No one knew how long he could last. While secretly worried, Yu Huang was also somewhat puzzled. Could a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator really have such great ability? He had come into contact with many Divine Sea Realm cultivators. The original Mountain Pass Master, Lu Yueme, was a 7th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, but even if Lu Yueme was still alive, if she really penetrated so deep into the enemy's ranks, wouldn't she be able to hold on for so long? In such an environment where enemies were on all sides, a single mistake could lead to eternal damnation. In the end, Yu Huang could only attribute Lu Ye's ability to his magical armor. As time passed, the scale of the insect tide became smaller and smaller. What made the soldiers at the mountain pass especially gratified was that there were no Divine Sea Realm insects among the attacking insect race, so even though their numbers were still large, the mountain pass's defenses were still able to cope. As long as they persevered, victory would be theirs. Lu Yi, on the other hand, was finding it difficult to hold on. More than half an hour had passed since the battle began, and the number of insects that died at his hands was hard to count. He had almost single-handedly reduced the scale of the insect tide by 20%, and with the efforts of the soldiers at the mountain pass, the scale of the insect tide was now only half of its initial size. He had almost eliminated all of the Divine Sea Realm insects, except for the dog insects. These insects were too cunning, and because they were small, they were extremely agile. After Lu Yi killed 2 of them in succession, they also realized that Lu Yi was not to be trifled with, so they never confronted him head-on. Instead, they often came over and quickly fled, just like how a ghost cultivator would flee thousands of miles away if their attack failed. With the cover of the insect tide, Lu Yi could not do anything to them. In addition to the first 2 hound bugs, Lu Yi killed 2 more, but they were all lucky. But there were at least 8 hound bugs left. Such a nimble and powerful force was a huge threat to both him and the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. On the dragon throne, Lu Yi panted heavily, swinging his saber numbly. Because he had been wearing the dragon throne for a long time, he had consumed too much energy. If this continued, he would not even have the strength to continue fighting, let alone maintain the dragon throne. He had to think of a way to break out of this situation. Returning to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass to rest was the best choice. It was easy for him to recover, and it would not take long for him to be full of energy. However, during this period of recovery, if there was no one to restrain these hound bugs, the defenses of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass might not be able to withstand the attack of the insect tide. The scale of the insect tide had indeed decreased, but the defense of the pass had also weakened. This was due to many factors, such as the energy consumption of the cultivators, the damage caused by the formation being overloaded, and most importantly, the lack of manpower at the pass made it difficult to fully utilize the advantages of the defense. Because of all these factors, although the scale of the insect tide had decreased, the defense of the pass was not as good as before. Therefore, the 8-headed hound bugs and the current insect tide were still a huge challenge to the defense of the pass. Once the defense was broken, the soldiers at the pass would be in danger. Therefore, he could not return to the pass. Since he could not return to the pass, he could only think of a way to lure these hound bugs away. Although these hound bugs were more intelligent than ordinary bugs, they were still bugs. Lu Yi could feel that they were very vengeful, especially after he killed 4 of their companions. During this period of time, they had been thinking of ways to take his life. If it were not for the dragon throne, he might really have died here. With a plan in mind, Lu Yi turned and charged out. As he spread his divine telekinesis, he monitored the movements of the hound bug. As expected, these hound bugs were watching him closely, hiding among the many bugs, waiting for an opportunity to attack. This was exactly what Lu Yi wanted. He waved his dragon ridge saber, and waves crackled as it carried the aura of death. During this time, the hound bugs came and went, pouncing to bite Lu Yi and quickly retreating, not giving him a chance to fight back. Lu Yi could not be bothered with them, as long as they followed him. Before he left, he wanted to kill as many ordinary bugs as possible. After a few breaths, the front suddenly became empty, and light entered his vision. He had killed his way out. Behind him was a large group of bugs. Lu Yi turned and swung his saber, and a huge blood-red saber light swept out, killing many more bugs. However, his figure suddenly swayed, and then there was a cracking sound. The dragon throne on his body fell apart, turning into countless tiny scale fragments. They gathered together and once again turned into that round ball that was the size of an infant's head. Lu Yi grabbed it and stuffed it into his storage space. His body swayed as he flew into the distance. However, he was worried. If the 8-headed hound bugs did not chase after him, he would have to kill his way back. If that was the case, he could only choose to return to the pass to recuperate. Fortunately, his worry was unnecessary. As if seeing him put away the dragon throne, they realized that this human was an arrow at the end of its flight and no longer had the fierce aura from before. The 8 hound bugs that had been watching him no longer hesitated and chased after him at an extremely fast speed. Lu Yi was relieved. While trying his best to escape, he took out a large number of spirit pills and stuffed them into his mouth. He then swallowed a drop of soul-washing water to quickly refine them to replenish his energy. The hound bugs were very fast. Lu Yi's normal speed was not as fast as them. He could only activate the wind spirit tattoo to support himself, which was why he was barely on par with them. As they chased, the human and the 8 bugs flew through the air, leaving the other bugs far behind. On the city wall of the pass, Yu Huang keenly sensed the change in the swarm because there were no more fluctuations of battle. His heart skipped a beat. Is Lu Yi dead? It would be a pity if such a young and talented man died here. Soon, he denied his guess. Even though the insectoid horde had increased their efforts, they did not see any divine sea realm insectoids, let alone big insect. Yu Huang understood that Lu Yi was not dead, but he must be in a bad situation, so he chose to lure the bugs away. Lu Yi's situation was not good and so was the pass. Without Lu Yi's suppression, the insect swarm put all their energy into breaking through. For a moment, the defense line of the pass was in danger. He roared and shouted to encourage the soldiers. He desperately poured his spiritual power into a formation to activate the power of the formation. However, on the battlefield, although morale and determination were important, it was still determined by strength. As the insect swarm gathered, the defense line of the pass finally collapsed. A large number of bugs rushed in from the defense line. The cultivators around the defense line tried their best to resist, but they still could not stop the expansion of the gap in the defense line. Yu Huang rushed forward. After fighting for only a moment, he was covered in wounds. As he watched the cultivators around him fall one after another, his heart filled with hatred and anger. He stood in front of the gap, roaring as he killed his enemies. Many ferocious and terrifying bugs swarmed toward him, but Yu Huang did not retreat. Even if he died, he would use his body to block the gap. Just as he was about to die, spots of starlight suddenly filled the air and instantly filled his vision. Then, violent energy fluctuations came out from the spots of starlight. Yu Huang's nostrils suddenly shrank. Realizing that something was wrong, he hurriedly pushed his spiritual energy to protect himself. In the next moment, a series of explosions rang out. In his vision, large areas of flames burned. The powerful impact sent Yu Huang flying. He fell to the ground and coughed violently. Lu Ye is back. At this moment, this thought appeared in Yu Huang's mind, but he soon realized that something was wrong. Lu Ye was a weapon cultivator, but the method he used just now was performed by a magic cultivator. Strong reinforcements are here. Yu Huang reacted. He looked up and saw an average-sized figure standing where he had been standing, blocking the gap in the defensive line. He unleashed powerful spells of a large scale, stopping the attacks of a large number of insectoids on his own. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yu Huang recognized this person. This was an 8th Order Divine Sea Master from Heaven's Gate Pass. He seemed to be surnamed Wan, but Yu Huang did not know what his name was. Wiping the blood off his face, he hurriedly rushed to this person's side. Old Wan. Old Wan used his means to block the bug tide while speaking. This bug tide is not large, so how did it end up like this? Didn't Chen Xiao say that there was a tiger insect? He had killed his way in from outside the bug tide, but he did not see a single tiger insect. He did not even see a single divine sea realm bug. Logically speaking, such an insect tide should not be a big threat to the mountain pass. However, it was extremely difficult to defend the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, and from the looks of it, there were even a number of casualties. The tiger insect was lured away by Lu Ye. There were also many divine sea realm bugs. They should have all been killed by him, Yu Huang hurriedly explained. Lu Ye. Old Wan raised his eyebrows. That Lu Ye from Blue Blood Sect? Where is he now? I don't know. I couldn't sense his aura from just now, but he should still be alive. Old Wan frowned and did not say anything more. He ordered, "Consolidate the defense line first." Yu Huang received the order and quickly called the cultivators at the mountain pass over. After the border defense line was stabilized, Old Wan waved his sleeves and brazenly charged out. 4 divine sea realm cultivators, in such a situation, they could only display their advantage by taking the initiative to attack, instead of defending the pass with the many soldiers. Offense was the best defense. The more they killed, the less pressure there would be on the defense line. Lu Ye did this, Old Wan did this, Li Taibai and Lin Yu did this too. Chapter 1083. Compared to the difficult situation at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, the situation at the Dark Moon Forest Pass was undoubtedly much better. The insect swarm coming out from the crack was divided into 2 groups. One group went north to the Dark Moon Forest Pass, and the other went south to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Although there were many insects going north, and some of them were at the Spirit Sea Realm, there were only 2 of them. Plus, Li Taibai and Lin Yu, 2 Spirit Sea Realm warriors, were guarding the pass. Therefore, the situation was under control from beginning to end. After Lin Yu and Li Taibai worked together to kill the 2 insects, the situation was completely stabilized. Now, what the cultivators of the Dark Moon Forest Pass needed to do was to fight steadily and slowly nibble away at the insects. This way, they could eliminate the insects to the greatest extent while ensuring their own safety. At this point, Lin Yu's mood also relaxed as a medical cultivator next to her was treating her injuries. Her injuries weren't light, but they weren't serious either. They were from the fight with the 2 insects. For a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, it wasn't to the extent that it would affect their strength. She turned to look at Lu Ye. "Junior brother, you've worked hard. You did well this time. I will go to 10,000 Demon City and ask for a reward for you." Li Taibai's performance in dealing with the insect tide this time undoubtedly made her extremely satisfied. If it weren't for his help, this insect tide wouldn't have been so easy to deal with. Breaking the defensive line would have been light, but there would have been a lot of casualties. Especially when she was killing those two giant insects, the sharpness of Li Taibai's flying sword made her worry less. The sword light that came and went back and forth often appeared when she needed it the most, sharing her worries and solving her difficulties. The strength he displayed was extremely strong. Lin Yu secretly sighed. As expected of someone who could kill enemies above their realm. This kind of performance wasn't something that any second-order Spirit Sea Realm cultivator could compare with. If it were anyone else, it would be good if they didn't hinder her, let alone help her so much. She used to think that Li Taibai was a character who could compete with Grand Heaven Union's Luya, but now it seemed that her vision was too low. Luya had indeed stirred up a lot of trouble in the Spirit Stream battlefield and Cloud River battlefield, attracting the attention of the top sects of Myriad Demon Ridge. But after breaking through to the True Lake realm, there seemed to be no news about him, especially in the past few years. When they were young, they would show off their abilities, but as they grew older, they would slowly fade away. This was a clear sign that they were lacking in stamina. It seemed that Luya was such a person. When his cultivation was not high, he had shown extraordinary talent and monstrous talent. With his own strength, he had made many large sects fear him. But now, as his cultivation gradually increased, he slowly returned to mediocrity. In comparison, a rising star like Li Taibai was the real new force that had suddenly emerged. In the Spirit Stream realm and the Cloud River realm, he hadn't been in the limelight at all. In fact, no one had even heard of him. However, when he reached the True Lake realm and the Spirit Sea realm, he suddenly exploded with power. Only people like that could go far and achieve things that others couldn't. Supposedly, a few tens of years ago, the Jade Blood Sect's Feng Wujiang was such a person. When his cultivation wasn't high, he was extremely mediocre, but once he soared into the sky. He soared through the sky and quickly arrived at a height that ordinary cultivators would never be able to attain in their entire lifetimes. This kind of person was a late bloomer. Of course, with Li Taibai's age, he couldn't be considered a late bloomer. But that was the logic behind it. Lin Yu let her imagination run wild. In her heart, Luya wasn't even fit to carry Li Taibai's shoes. In the recent 100 years, only Feng Wujiang could be mentioned in the same breath as Li Taibai. It's my duty. Senior sister, you're too serious. The doppelganger replied. He looked forward as if he was observing the movements of the insect swarm. In fact, he was paying attention to the situation of the main body. He had to think of a way to help the main body. The 8 insects were chasing closely. The main body had exhausted too much energy in the battle. Even if he was rapidly replenishing his energy, due to the limited time, it was difficult for him to fully recover. If he wanted to eliminate the enemy in this battle, he had to work together with the main body and the doppelganger. This was also the reason why the main body led the 8 insects to escape in this direction. Lu Yi didn't know when the reinforcements from the Haotian alliance would come. Under such circumstances, this was the only choice he could make. As for whether the Shocking Waves Lake Pass could be defended after he left, it wasn't something he could control. He could only hope that the soldiers at the pass could hold on. No one could help him in a short period of time. But within 1,000 miles there was a natural helper, and that was his doppelganger. As long as he did it well, even if he couldn't kill all 8 insects, he could kill half of them. As for the rest, as long as there wasn't a large-scale insect swarm to help him, they wouldn't be a threat. The distance was getting closer and closer. The main body had already led the 8 insects to the border of the pass. The doppelganger didn't hesitate anymore. He said, "Senior sister, I'll go kill another group." As soon as he finished speaking, he activated his sword radiance and dashed into the insect swarm. In an instant, the sword chi was raging. Because he and Lin Yu had killed most of the divine sea realm insects, although there was still a large number of them, they couldn't pose a threat to him anymore. Of course, the premise was that he didn't stay in the insect swarm for too long. Without the Dragon Emperor's protection, it would be troublesome to be trapped in the insect swarm. The main body dared to fight in the insect swarm alone because of the Dragon Emperor's protection. Before Lin Yu could say anything, Li Taibai's figure was drowned by the insect swarm. Lin Yu couldn't help but laugh. However, she was happy that Li Taibai was willing to work so hard. Although they hadn't known each other for a long time, she was satisfied with Li Taibai. This person didn't have the youthful vigor of a young man, nor did he have the arrogance of a genius. He could execute all of her orders perfectly and was approachable to the other soldiers at the pass. It was easy to get along with such a person. It could be said that Li Taibai had gained a lot of respect in the past few months since he came to the pass. All the soldiers loved and respected him. Feeling the intense spiritual power fluctuations in the insect swarm, Lin Yu knew that it was Li Taibai killing the enemy. However, she soon realized that something was wrong because the movements of killing the enemy gradually quieted down and disappeared. Even with her divine sense, she couldn't detect Li Taibai's aura. She panicked and hurriedly checked the battlefield imprint. After confirming that Li Taibai's imprint was intact, she hurriedly sent a message. "Junior brother Taibai, where did you go?" Not receiving a response, Lin Yu was at a loss for a moment. At this moment, the doppelganger was rushing in the direction of the main body. It flew straight to the fissure where the insect swarm was surging out. Only then did it slow down and descend toward the fissure. Hiding in a hidden place, it activated concealment and breath control to enhance itself and quietly lay dormant. At this moment, the 8 insects were circling around the area under the lead of the main body. The reason for this was, firstly, to wait for the doppelganger to get into position. Secondly, it was to stall for time so that it could recover its strength. Only when the doppelganger was ready did Lu Ye's figure tremble and fly toward the fissure. The 8 giant insects followed closely behind him, unable to shake him off like a pair of irascible sisters. Lu Yi deliberately lowered his flying altitude, flying only 300 feet away from the fissure. The dogs and insects followed him without any warning. Killing intent burst out and sword light flashed. Sword rays flew out from the cracks in the ground like waterfalls, converging into a river of sword rays. The river of sword rays split into 3, turning into 3 sword dragons, crazily spinning and drilling. In the blink of an eye, they attacked the bottom of the last 3 hounds. Although the intelligence of the dogs and insects was higher than that of ordinary insects, it was still limited. Who would have thought that there was a hidden killing intent below? By the time they reacted, it was already too late. 2 of the sword dragons easily tore open the abdomens of the dogs and insects. Sword light poured in and instantly killed them on the spot. Basically, all insects had a bony carapace on their backs to provide solid protection, but they were not without weaknesses. Their weakness was under their abdomens. Most insects had no carapace protection on their abdomens, including the dogs and insects. When Lu Yi was entangled with them at the mountain pass earlier, he had exploited this weakness many times and killed 2 of them. Nevertheless, the dogs and insects were too agile, so it was difficult to kill them most of the time. Li Taibai's doppelganger had timed his sneak attack perfectly. Coupled with the sword cultivator's terrifying burst of power, he killed 2 of the dogs and insects in one fell swoop. The 3rd dog managed to escape. It was not that the doppelganger's sword control was not good, but that the dog and insect reacted too quickly. When it sensed that something was wrong, it immediately changed directions, causing the sword dragon that was aimed at it to hit empty air. The 3 sword dragons suddenly scattered and turned into countless sword lights, which went toward the remaining dogs and insects from behind, forcing them to scatter. The moment the doppelganger made a move, Yangming's main body also turned around. The fiery red wings on his back spread out, and with the support of wind travel, his speed was raised to the limit in an instant. In a flash, he arrived in front of the nearest dog and unsheathed his mountain saber to stab at the dog's ferocious mouth. The dog and insect were still dodging the doppelganger's sword lights. Who would have thought that the human who was being chased so pathetically by them would suddenly attack? If two different cultivators worked together, no matter how telepathic they would not be able to coordinate so flawlessly. However, there was no such problem when the main body and the doppelganger worked together. After all, regardless of whether it was Lu Ye or Li Tai Bai, they were all the same person. 7. The mountain saber stabbed over, and the dog and insect could not dodge at all. The saber pierced through its mouth and into its viscera. The thorny spiritual inscriptions were activated. Lu Yi twisted the saber in his hand and cut open the dog and insect's body. Lu Yi retracted his saber and slashed down. The huge impact caused the dog and insect to immediately fall down. In midair, its blood and broken viscera scattered, and its life was quickly extinguished. In just a few breaths' time, 3 of the 8 dogs and insects had been killed. There were only 5 left. This was the advantage of a sneak attack. In a normal fight, one would not be able to kill so many in such a short time. The earth-shattering sword lights were still attacking from below, forcing the dog and insect to dodge. Although the sword lights were sharp, it was difficult for them to gain anything. Yangming's main body held his saber and attacked another dog and insect, forcing it to hastily meet the attack head-on. 2. Chapter 1084. Although Lu Ye's attacks were fierce, the dog bugs were still big bugs. The white bone carapace on their backs was extremely sturdy. Even if the Pan Shan saber slashed on it, it could only leave a mark and not damage its foundation. It was hard to take its life in a short time. On the contrary, the dog bugs kept biting him, making him look like he was in danger. Another 2 dogs recovered from the surprise attack and flanked Lu Yi from the left and right, while the remaining 2 flew towards the direction of the fissure, searching for traces of the doppelganger. They also knew that in this kind of battle, they could not expose their weak abdomen to the enemy. Therefore, the doppelganger hidden in the fissure was a threat. Without any other choice, the doppelganger could only rush out from the fissure. Many sword lights surrounded it as it rushed towards the main body. Activating the sword chi and using the book sword technique, it broke through the obstruction of the 2 dog bugs and successfully met up with the main body. In an instant, the aura of the main body and the doppelganger merged and linked up to form a formation. If ordinary cultivators wanted to form a formation, they would need to have a tacit understanding and be familiar with each other. Moreover, they would need to practice for a long time or use the twin chi-linked branches formation disc. However, it was too easy for the main body and the doppelganger to form a formation. They were originally one body, so there was no need for any external help. Their aura soared. The 2 of them faced the 5 dog bugs head-on and were not at a disadvantage. For a moment, the saber lights and sword lights were dazzling. The situation in the Dark Moon Forest Pass had completely stabilized. There was no need for Lin Yu to do anything anymore. All that was left was to clean up the mess. The stupid bugs only knew how to attack and not retreat. The cultivators in the pass only needed to fight steadily and surely to kill the rest of the bugs. She was worried about Li Taibai's safety, so she rushed out and looked around. At the same time, she kept sending messages, but she still did not get a response. At the same time, outside the pass, Elder Wan's voice sounded. "I'll leave the rest to you. I'll go find Lu Ye." Using spells to open a path, he rushed out of the bugs and rushed out. Lu Ye had lured all the bugs away and had not returned yet. The situation must not be good, so he had to go and help. As for the pass, it was no longer a big problem. The remaining bugs were just moving battle achievements for the soldiers at the pass, so they could be dealt with by the soldiers. 1 in the north and 1 in the south, 2 camps and 2 mountain passes. 2 silhouettes set off at almost the same time, rushing towards the direction of the fissure. A moment later, Elder Wan sensed a violent spiritual energy fluctuation coming from the front. It was obvious that someone was fighting over there, and it was in full swing. He immediately sped up and soon saw the battlefield. In midair, two silhouettes were moving back and forth. One of them was holding a saber that emitted a piercingly cold saber light, while the other was riding a sword that emitted sword chi. They attacked from afar and fought in close combat. Their teamwork brought out the best of each other, and they had incomparable tacit understanding. In the sky, there was a slowly rotating river of sword chi that was constantly shrinking, sealing off the space where the giant insects could move. When Elder One rushed over, he saw the man wielding the saber slashing down and slashing a dog bug in the air. The bug's blood splattered across the sky, and the visual impact was extremely shocking. Even though he had never seen him before, Elder One recognized the youth with a single glance as Liu Ye. This was because Liu Ye was a weapon cultivator who used a saber. Furthermore, he always had a white tiger beast by his side. This was consistent with some of the information he had received in the past. Elder One secretly sighed. As expected of a character who could stir up a storm in the Spirit Stream and Cloud River realms. Even though he had been silent for a few years in the True Lake realm, he still had an extremely huge heritage. He had actually killed such a giant insect just like that. The power of that saber strike was not something a second-order divine sea realm cultivator could produce. What made him a little suspicious was that this sword cultivator had never seen or heard of him before. However, his ability to ride a sword was extremely amazing. What was even rarer was that he actually cooperated so skillfully with Liu Ye. This kind of cooperation could only appear between people who were extremely close to each other, or they could use the twin chi-linked spirit array. Just as he was thinking this, Elder One suddenly raised his eyes and looked into the distance. In that direction, a stream of light was rapidly approaching, accompanied by an extremely clear aura of a seventh-order divine sea realm. Soon, a graceful figure appeared in Elder One's field of vision. At the same time, Liu Ye also saw Elder One. The two of them, one from the south and one from the north, looked at each other for a moment, then at the same time looked at the fierce battlefield. They both understood what was going on. Almost at the same time, the two of them stopped and stood still only a few thousand feet away from the battlefield. They did not rush forward and secretly circulated their spirit chi. At this moment, Elder One could tell that the young sword cultivator was not a cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance, but from Myriad Demon Ridge. Otherwise, Lin Yu would not have rushed over. So, it should be that Liu Ye led these giant insects to meet this sword cultivator by chance, and the other party helped him. But if that was the case, how could he cooperate with Liu Ye so skillfully? Elder One could not understand, but it did not prevent him from accurately inferring the current situation. These two young people cooperated with each other to kill the giant insect. The scene seemed thrilling, but in fact, the situation was under control. The two of them should not have to worry about their lives. As for whether they could kill the remaining giant insects, it would depend on their methods. At this time, others should not rashly intervene, especially under the premise that Lin Yu was nearby. If they rashly intervened, it would inevitably ruin the cooperation between the two young people and easily cause Lin Yu to misunderstand. Many thoughts flashed through Elder Wan's mind, and at this moment, Lin Yu's heart was also in turmoil. Elder Wan did not know Li Taibai, but she knew Liu Ye. She did not expect that Liu Ye would actually appear here and cooperate with Li Taibai to kill the insect. Moreover, Liu Ye's performance in the battle was clearly not weaker than Li Taibai's, and the two young people's cultivation were equally matched. In other words, if the two of them were to fight one-on-one, it was hard to say who would win. Lin Yu was a little dazed. She had thought that Liu Ye did not have enough strength and had disappeared. In the future, Jiuzhou would be the place where Li Taibai would become famous. But now it seemed that the situation was not what she thought at all. Liu Ye was still Liu Ye, and he was still so dazzling. What Elder Wan thought of, she naturally thought of as well. That was why she and Elder Wan stopped outside the battlefield at the same time. Fellow Taoist Lin, long time no see. Elder Wan's voice sounded in her ear. Although the two of them were not familiar with each other, they had seen each other several times, so they recognized each other. "Fellow Taoist Wan," Lin Yu replied. "I have to congratulate fellow Taoist Lin for having such a talent under your command. I wonder what this young man's name is, and where did he learn from?" Lin Yu frowned. She did not want to reveal Li Taibai's background, but on second thought, a person like Li Taibai would become famous in Jiuzhou sooner or later, and it was impossible to hide it, unless she did not let him appear in front of others in the future. She said generously, "Li Taibai. As for his master, he is just a rogue cultivator, not from a famous sect." "A rogue cultivator?" Elder Wan was shocked. He thought that this young sword cultivator was a talent secretly cultivated by a top sect in Wanmo Ridge, but he did not expect him to be a rogue cultivator. He did not think that Lin Yu would lie to him about this kind of thing, so if she said that Li Taibai was a rogue cultivator, then he must be a rogue cultivator. Although it was not easy for rogue cultivators to cultivate, it did not mean that they did not have great achievement. There were still some top experts in the history of Jiuzhou who were rogue cultivators, and these rogue cultivators all obtained great opportunities and mysterious inheritances. Therefore, although they were not from famous sects, they still had some background in terms of their master. Young people nowadays are really amazing. Elder Wan sighed. These two people cooperate well. I think we should not disturb them and just stay in the formation. Fellow Taoist Lin, what do you think? Although they had a tacit understanding, it was better to make some things clear. If it were a few years ago, in the face of such a situation, the two would definitely not have such an idea. They would have directly rushed into the battle. No matter what, they had to get rid of the other party's rising stars first. But now that the insect disaster had swept across Jiuzhou, the two camps had tacitly stopped their dispute. Even when cultivators met in the wild, sometimes they would sincerely cooperate. If the low-level cultivators had such awareness, how could the two of them, who were in the Divine Sea realm, not have such awareness? Lin Yu nodded and said, "I also have the same idea." With the two of them by the side, even if Lu Ye and Li Taibai did not do their best, these giant insects would not be able to escape. After finishing their discussion, the two of them turned their gazes towards the battlefield. What they saw shocked them once more, because in this short period of time, another giant insect was killed by the joint efforts of the two young people. This time, it was Li Taibai who attacked. The flexible flying sword drilled into the giant insect's abdomen and came out from its mouth, stirring up the insect's blood. Out of the 5 giant insects, only 3 remained. The balance of strength was tilted, and there was not much suspense in this battle. Lin Yu and Old Wan sighed more and more. Because whether it was Lu Ye or Li Taibai, the strength they showed was not something they should have at their level of cultivation. If it were 2 ordinary second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivators, they would have already died in such a situation, but the two of them were able to kill the giant insects one after another. Especially the cooperation between the two, it was simply pleasing to the eye. It was extremely straightforward, without the slightest hesitation. Whether it was Old Wan or Lin Yu, it was rare to see such cooperation. Another dozen breaths later, Lu Ye was the first to strike. He swung his saber at one of the giant insects. In the blink of an eye, the saber light flashed and cut a deep wound on the giant insect's back. However, he did not take its life. Instead, he pulled out his saber and charged at another giant insect. The moment Lu Ye pulled out his sword, the sword light in the sky suddenly condensed and turned into an astonishing sword strike that accurately cut into the wound on the giant insect's back. The giant insect's thick white bone carapace, which had been pierced by the saber, could no longer withstand the attack and was directly split in half. Without this layer of protection, the giant insect's body also split apart. Good! Elder One couldn't help but praise. This kind of flawless cooperation was also a visual feast for the spectators. Chapter 1085. Lin Yu also smiled. In terms of battle results, Li Taibai had already killed 2 dumb insects, while Lu Ye had only killed 1. In this aspect, the 10,000 Demon Ridge was slightly better. There were only 2 insects left. Just as Lu Ye's clone was about to take them all down in one go, the 2 giant insects finally realized that something was wrong. Originally, there were 8 of them chasing out, but now there were only 2 left. How were they going to fight? The insects didn't have much intelligence, so they couldn't think too much. At this time, they could only follow their instincts. After realizing that something was wrong, the 2 insects fled in 2 directions, one left and one right. Lu Ye's clone chased after 1 insect. At the same time, Elder Wan and Lin Yu also rushed out. Just now, the 2 young people had been working closely together, so they didn't want to disturb them. Now that the 2 had separated and the insects were showing signs of escaping, they naturally couldn't sit back and watch. Lu Ye's original body met up with Elder Wan, and his clone met up with Lin Yu. Their spiritual power surged. After a while, the original body's battle ended first. After all, Elder Wan's cultivation was higher than Lin Yu's, so he had an advantage in such a battle. Soon after, the clone also killed the last dumb insect. The battle ended. Lu Ye's original body sheathed his sword, and the clone's many sword lights spiraled into the sword gourd. The 2 turned around and looked at each other from hundreds of feet away. Lu Yi thought about what he should say in such a situation. If there were no outsiders, it would be fine, but the key was that the Divine Sea Realm cultivators and Lin Yu were present. It would be strange if he didn't say anything. After a while, he slowly said, "You're very good." The clone grinned and replied, "You're good too." The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. It felt even stranger to praise himself so blatantly. But in the eyes of Elder Wan and Lin Yu, the 2 rising stars appreciated each other. For rising stars like Lu Ye and Li Taibai, it was undoubtedly a great fortune to have someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with them in the same generation. The road ahead was long, and the competition between 2 people was always better than one person being alone. Lu Yi saluted again. "Lu Ye of the Jade Blood Sect. Thank you for your help." The Avatar returned the greeting. "Itinerant cultivator Li Taibai. It is our duty as cultivators to exterminate the insectoid. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely drink and chat with you." Sure. Lu Yi really didn't know what to say. Fortunately, Elder Wan reached out to stroke his beard and laughed. "It's good to be young." Lin Yu obviously felt the same way. She agreed and said, "Yes. Now that this matter is settled, I'll take my leave," Elder Wan said before turning around and flying towards the direction of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Lu Yi followed closely behind. On the other side, Lin Yu also called out to her doppelganger and rushed towards the Dark Moon Forest Pass. A woman's curiosity was extremely strong, and even a 7th-order Divine Sea cultivator like Lin Yu was no exception. On the way back, she asked, "Junior brother used to know Lu Ye?" The clone hurriedly shook his head. "This is the first time I've seen it. You cooperated so well with him that I thought you 2 were already familiar with each other. It's probably because our temperaments are compatible." This was also true, so Lin Yu naturally didn't doubt it. In her opinion, Li Taibai had no need to deceive her. Moreover, Myriad Demon Ridge and Grand Heaven Alliance, how familiar could they be? The 2 of you have similar figures and average cultivations. When you stand together, you look like brothers. Lin Yu pursed her lips and chuckled. It was obvious that she was in a good mood. The clones secretly thought that they weren't just brothers, they were the same person. Lin Yu continued, "But junior brother is much more handsome than Lu Ye." On the main body's side, Elder Wan didn't have much to say. He simply asked about the previous situation, and Lu Yi picked up some things that could be said. By the time the 2 of them returned to Startling Waves Lake Pass, the battle here was already nearing its end. Many soldiers charged out of the pass and formed different formations under the effect of the Kindred Formation Disc, rapidly reaping the lives of the insectoids. Lu Yi and Elder Wan didn't have any intention of interfering. They just wandered around the battlefield to provide support, allowing the soldiers to vent their fighting spirit. After half a day, all the insect race had been exterminated. Only then did the soldiers begin to clean up the battlefield and collect the corpses of their fallen companions. Lu Yi found Elder Wan and said, "Elder Wan, this matter is over. I should leave." He came out for two things only, but there were some hiccups along the way. Due to fate, he got involved in this insect tide. Now that everything was settled, there was no need to stay. Elder Wan was communicating with someone. Hearing this, he raised his hand and motioned for Lu Yi to not speak. Lu Yi stood quietly and waited. After a while, Elder Wan ended the communication and looked at Lu Yi. "The Shocking Waves Lake Pass is now without a leader. You need to stay here for the time being." Lu Yi was stunned. "With Elder Wan here, why do I need to stay here?" Elder Wan said, "I'm the UG Protector. I'm not limited to a certain pass. This old master will go wherever he is needed. There are new tasks from above, so this old master needs to leave now. Then transfer some other Divine Sea Realm cultivators. I'm only a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator now. How can I stay here?" Elder Wan looked at him meaningfully. "Although your cultivation is low, your strength isn't weak. There's no need to be so modest. Moreover, there's a shortage of manpower everywhere right now. For the time being, we can't transfer anyone suitable to stay here. You can keep the position of Pass Master for now. If it were any other Divine Sea Realm cultivator, they might not have such prestige. So, right now, you are the most suitable candidate. But I'm from the Law Division." Lu Yi still wanted to struggle. Staying at a pass wasn't a good thing. If he had a choice, he would rather choose the UG Protector position. It would give him more freedom to move around. The Law Division is also part of the State Guard. I've already reported this matter to the State Guard. Someone from Department Lord Qian's side will go greet them. That's all. This old master has a task to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Wan shot up into the sky and disappeared. Lu Yi watched him leave, speechless. He didn't understand how the situation had developed to this point. Inexplicably, he had become the Pass Master. Although his clone was also the Pass Master, there was still Lin Yu above him, so he didn't have a say in everything. But the situation here at Shocking Waves Lake Pass was different. There was no one above him, so he was the Pass Master. Yu Huang hurriedly ran in front of him and cupped his fists. "This subordinate greets Sir Pass Master." Lu Yi didn't know where he had heard this news, but it was probably Elder Wan who had told him. "What's the matter?" Lu Yi asked. Yu Huang handed over a jade slip. "This is the number of casualties in this battle. Please take a look, sir." Lu Yi took it and scanned through it. This time, a group of people had died at Shocking Waves Lake Pass. There weren't many of them, only a few dozen. If it was in the past, this number of casualties wouldn't be a big deal for a mountain pass. But now, all the mountain passes were short of manpower, so this number of casualties wasn't small. Lu Yi didn't know how to deal with it, but thinking about what his clone had seen at Dark Moon Forest Pass, he said, "Find someone to transport the corpses back to Grand Sky City. Send out an obituary notice, and ask the sects and families behind them to take the corpses back." "Yes." Yu Huang accepted the order and left. It didn't seem too difficult, Lu Yi thought. Suddenly, a message came from the battlefield imprint. He checked it and found that it was from Gan Wudong. He immediately scolded him. "Bastard, why didn't you stay in Grand Sky City? Why did you come to Shocking Waves Lake Pass?" Gan Wudong was furious. It wasn't easy for the Law Division to produce such a talented person. Last time at the Grand Council, even Military Supply Minister Chao Ye's request to conscript Lu Yi was rejected by him, but now Lu Yi had come running to Shocking Waves Lake Pass, not putting him in his eyes at all. "I was bored sitting in seclusion, so I decided to take a walk. When I came here, I happened to encounter an insect tide and decided to lend a hand." Lu Yi hurriedly replied. Did you know Lu Yueme died? Gan Wudong asked again. I heard. How did she die? I wanted to ask you, did you kill her? Gan Wudong's suspicions were normal. Back then, Lu Yueme had disregarded her status and bullied the weak to hunt down Lu Yi. At that time, he and the sect master had come to save her. With such grievances, Lu Yi had a motive to kill Lu Yueme. Senior must be joking. I'm just a second-order Divine Sea cultivator, while Lu Yueme is already a seventh order. How could I possibly kill her? You alone can't, but what if Li Tai Bai joins you? Senior also knows about Li Tai Bai. Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. Old Wan really had a big mouth, spreading the news so quickly. But thinking about it, some things couldn't be hidden, and from Old Wan's perspective, there was no need to hide anything. Lu Yi was a second-order Divine Sea cultivator, and if he wanted to take charge of this mountain pass, he needed to have a decent battle record. I just found out, and I heard that Li Tai Bai has a grudge with Lu Yueme for killing his son. It had to be admitted that these Divine Sea realm cultivators with high status were very well informed, so it was no wonder Gan Wudong had such suspicions. Both Lu Ye and Li Tai Bai had great enmity with Lu Yueme, but both of them had the ability to kill enemies above their level. Adding on the fact that they were familiar with each other, it was still possible for them to kill Lu Yueme. On top of that, the timing of Lu Ye's appearance here was too coincidental, so Gan Wudong had no choice but to speculate. Senior, I'm really innocent. I don't know Li Tai Bai, and today was the first time we met. On top of that, he's from Myriad Demon Ridge, so how could I possibly associate myself with him? Lu Yueme's death was something Lu Yi couldn't admit to, even if he was facing Gan Wudong. As long as you believe it, Gan Wudong was too lazy to say anything more to him, but right now you need to take charge of Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Who told you to show up at the right time and display such outstanding strength? Perhaps the Sioux Province Guard can transfer people to replace you, or perhaps they can't. In any case, there is one thing you need to remember: you are a member of the Law Division, no one can change that. The latest domain name of this site. Chapter 1086. After ending the conversation with Gan Wudong, Lu Yi frowned. Judging from the current situation, it seemed he couldn't run away from the task of guarding Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Just as Gan Wudong said, who told him to show up at the right time and display such extraordinary strength. Of course, Old Man Wan must have strongly recommended him, otherwise, it would have been impossible for a second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator to guard such a large mountain pass alone. However, the personal recommendation of an 8th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator like Yu Ji Hu Jun had some weight. For Lu Yi, this wasn't too difficult to accept, it just depended on how he felt about it. Even if he were to return to Grand Sky City, he would continue to refine the explosive Fire Spirit Rock and the Twin Spirit Connection Array Disc. Even if he were to stay here, he would still need to refine them. Moreover, staying here was far away from the Emperor. No one would restrict him, and he would have more time. Considering this, staying at Shocking Waves Lake Pass seemed to be better than returning to Grand Sky City. Of course, how long he could stay here depended on how the State Guard's higher-ups mobilized their manpower. If the right people were mobilized, he might be able to leave quickly, but if not, he would have to stay here forever. This wasn't a big problem. The only thing that made Lu Yi a little wary was the speculation about Lu Yueme's death revealed in Gan Wudong's words. Gan Wudong might have just casually mentioned it, or maybe he really did have such a guess, but in the end, he really did kill Lu Yueme. If it weren't for the sudden explosion of the insect tide, he would have been able to escape quickly after killing Lu Yueme, and no one would have connected him to Lu Yueme's death. However, the outbreak of the insect tide made it impossible for him to ignore Shocking Waves Lake Pass, so he could only do his best to help. It turned out that if he hadn't arrived at Shocking Waves Lake Pass at the critical moment, the insect race really might have broken through, and if that had happened, the casualties would have been great. Gan Wudong was in a high position and could obtain information that many people couldn't, so he had such a guess. However, there was no direct evidence for this kind of thing, and for Gan Wudong, even if Lu Yuemei really died at Lu Ye's hands, so what? But in the end, this kind of guess was just a beginning. If Gan Wudong could have such a guess, it meant that others might also have such a guess. For example, the higher-ups of Heavenly Yuan sect, or the masters close to Lu Yuemei. They had to be on guard against such things. However, in the end, as long as Lu Yi didn't admit it, no one could do anything to him. A second-order Divine Sea Realm killing a seventh-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator was nothing more than a pipe dream, so guesses could only remain guesses. What he didn't know was that at this very moment, an old woman was rushing towards Shocking Waves Lake aggressively from the direction of Heaven's Gate. The old woman was Yu Huajin, an elder of the Heaven Yuan sect and Lu Yuemei's mother-in-law. Although she was old and her figure was slightly hunched, she was still a true ninth-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. A few years ago, she didn't look this old, but she had suffered a huge blow a few years ago that had left her physically and mentally exhausted, greatly damaging her vitality. That blow came from the end of the family's only bloodline. Speaking of which, the fate of her life was extremely tragic. Not long after they got married, her husband died. It wasn't that he was killed by someone, but that he failed to break through to the Divine Sea Realm, causing his soul to be damaged and his spiritual energy to become chaotic. She was widowed at a young age, but fortunately, she had a son in her belly at that time. After giving birth to him, she worked hard to raise him and had some achievements. She had hoped that her son would become famous in the 9 provinces and strengthen the prestige of her clan, but because he didn't follow orders, he was killed by that damn Feng Wujiang. When the news came, Yu Huajin almost went crazy, but she knew the gap in strength between her and Feng Wujiang. She also knew the glory of the Blue Blood sect, so she could only bury the bitterness and hatred in her heart. Her son was dead, but there was still her grandson. Her grandson's aptitude was not bad, and he was worth cultivating. In order to avoid any accidents during his growth, she deliberately placed him in Shocking Waves Lake Pass under Heaven's Gate. After all, the owner of Shocking Waves Lake Pass was her grandson's biological mother, so it was convenient for her to take care of him. However, the heavens didn't fulfill her wishes. A few years ago, her poor grandson was actually killed. Although the murderer soon received the retribution he deserved, the dead could not be brought back to life. The Tan family's bloodline was cut off, and in the entire Tan family, only she and her daughter-in-law, 2 widows with different surnames, were left. It was also that blow that greatly damaged Yu Huajin's vitality, causing her to fall ill. After her injury was healed, although she still had a 9th-order Divine Sea cultivation, anyone with discerning eyes could see that her vitality was slipping. If she really fought someone, it would be difficult for her to display the strength of a 9th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. This kind of thing only happened to those Divine Sea Realm cultivators who had lived for many years. Because they grew older and their lifespan was approaching, their foundation would weaken, making it difficult for them to display their full strength. But this shouldn't have happened to Yu Huajin, because in terms of age, she was far from reaching the point where her strength would decline. Since the death of her grandson, Yu Huajin and her daughter-in-law rarely contacted each other, because every time they did, the scars in their hearts would be reopened, making them feel so much pain that they wished they were dead. As a result, just yesterday, she received news of her daughter-in-law's death. Her husband was dead, her son was dead, her grandson was dead, and now even her daughter-in-law was dead. But she, this damned old woman, was still alive in this world. Yu Huajin once wondered if her fate was too strong, so everyone related to her would die because of her. She didn't know how her daughter-in-law died, nor did she know who killed her, so even if she wanted to take revenge, she was powerless. However, in the end, some news had reached her ears. Even though she knew it was unlikely, she really needed to vent at a time like this. Thus, she left Heaven's Gate and headed straight for Shocking Waves Lake. She was afraid that if she was late, that person would have left. Evidence? She was an old woman who was about to die. What evidence did she need? As long as there was suspicion, it was enough. First, she would go to Shocking Waves Lake Pass to kill Luia, then go to Dark Moon Forest Pass to kill Li Tai Bai. Even if her strength had declined, she was still a ninth-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Someone blocked the road ahead. Yu Huajin stopped, her face gloomy. The man glanced at Yu Huajin and sighed slightly. Sure enough. Why is Senior Brother Zhao here? Yu Huajin asked. The person who came was an acquaintance of hers, a member of Heavenly Yuan sect. He was now an elder of Grand Sky City's elder group, and could be said to be in a high position. Moreover, the two of them weren't just senior brother and junior sister of the same sect. When they were young, this senior brother Zhao was quite affectionate to her. After her husband died, senior brother Zhao took care of her for many years, but as they grew older, they naturally separated. After all, that relationship couldn't see the light of day, even though many people in Heavenly Yuan sect were well aware of it. Zhao Chen looked at Yu Huajin with a complicated expression. He could only sigh at the fact that the flower of heavenly origin had aged so quickly. It was truly a pity. Although he was also old and slightly old, he wasn't as old as Yu Huajin. He knew in his heart that this junior sister of his had suffered too many blows over the years and had been too depressed. Yu Huajin suddenly realized something and her expression turned cold. Senior brother, are you here to stop me? Zhao Chen sighed. Junior sister, Luia can't be touched. When he received some news, he immediately understood that Yu Huajin would do something drastic, so he deliberately waited here. Now it seemed that his worries had come true. If there was anyone in this world who knew Yu Huajin the best, it was none other than him. Why? Yu Huajin looked at Zhao Chen puzzledly. What is senior brother's relationship with Luia that you want to protect him? Zhao Chen said, I have nothing to do with that young man. Junior sister, don't misunderstand. It's just that this boy is now too important, so I can't touch him. He's just a rising star who has just entered the Divine Sea stage. What's so important about him that I can't touch him? Zhao Chen knew that if he didn't give Yu Huajin an explanation today, it would be impossible to stop her, so he could only tell the truth. Has Heaven's Gate recently transferred a batch of explosive fire spirit stones and twin chi connected array discs over? Yu Huajin didn't know why Zhao Chen suddenly mentioned this, but she still responded patiently, yes. Not to mention the explosive fire spirit stones, what does junior sister think about the twin chi connected array disc? It is indeed a strange object. With that array disc, it can increase the strength of the soldiers by 30% out of thin air. Yu Huajin replied and suddenly realized, senior brother means that these two things are related to Luia? He can't be the one who refined them, right? Zhao Chen secretly thought that his junior sister was not too stupid. He nodded and said, it is he who refined them. This is a confidential matter. Only the people in the Great Council know about it. Deputy Leader Pang has also issued a gag order, so outsiders have not heard about it. So junior sister should know that in this situation, he can't be touched no matter what. Yu Huajin couldn't believe it. Not to mention the explosive fire spirit stones, this thing had been available for a few years, but the supply had been cut off for a while. However, the twin chi-connected array discs were indeed recognized as good things. When she saw the array disc before, she had guessed which master refiner this thing came from. She had also secretly inquired about it, but there was no conclusive information. In the end, it was actually refined by Luia. When these words came from Zhao Chen's mouth, Yu Huajin did not have any doubts. For a moment, she was absent-minded. A bone-chilling chill suddenly enveloped her body. Yu Huajin was shocked and unable to react. Zhao Chen also did not notice until a trace of spirit qi suddenly erupted. Zhao Chen's face changed drastically and he rushed forward. But in the next moment, He froze in place and stared in horror behind Yu Huajin. Yu Huajin's whole body stiffened. Because of the severe pain, even Zhu Long's figure straightened a little. She stared fixedly at the tip of the sword that had pierced through her chest, unable to accept that she, a ninth-order divine sea realm cultivator, had been sneak attacked without anyone noticing. With her divine sense, she suddenly noticed the familiar aura behind her. Gritting her teeth, she shouted, "Thought Moon immortal!" After dealing with this woman for so many years and repeatedly suffering losses at her hands, Yu Huajin instantly recognized her aura even without seeing her face. Zhao Chen also shouted at the same time, "Fellow Taoist Nian, please show mercy." Chapter 1087. Although the tip of the sword was aimed at the heart, it was slightly lower. Therefore, it did not go for the vital part. This meant that Nian Yuxian had no intention of killing Yu Huajin. Otherwise, Yu Huajin would have died under the attack just now. This gave Zhao Chen a glimmer of hope. He hurriedly pleaded for mercy. At the same time, he was shocked by Nian Yuxian's audacity. Whether it was the Haotian alliance or the Wanmo Ridge, there were internal conflicts. However, these conflicts were basically confined to the shadows and would never be shown on the surface. After all, each of them had their own rules. Moreover, the cultivators of the spirit sea realm had to care about each other's reputation. There was only one exception, and that was Nian Yuxian. Over the years, she had attacked Yu Huajin in public more than once, and she had also caused Yu Huajin to suffer losses. In the past, Yu Huajin had suffered losses, but at most, she was in a sorry state. But this time, it was obviously different. With such a sneak attack and such injuries, she could have died if she was not careful. If Yu Huajin really died here, then Nian Yuxian would not be able to escape the punishment of the Wei rules. Would she care? Zhao Chen really did not know. Ever since Feng Wujiang died in battle, this woman's actions were hard to predict. Otherwise, she would not have such a great reputation of being able to suppress a mountain pass alone. At this moment, Nian Yuxian was completely behind Yu Huajin, leaving no trace. The willow catkin short sword pierced through Yu Huajin's back and out of her heart. The spiritual power vibrated continuously, causing Yu Huajin's face to twist in pain. However, she did not dare to move at all because the cold murderous intent behind her made her feel cold all over. After cultivating for so many years, she had been injured countless times. However, this was the closest she had ever been to death. Life or death, it was just a thought from the other party. A breeze blew, and the smell of blood drifted. Nian Yuxian said softly, "You had thoughts that you shouldn't have. This sword is a lesson for now. In the future, if I find you within 100 miles of Luoya, I will take your life." It was just a simple explanation without any harsh words, but Yu Huajin knew that this woman could really do such a thing. She gritted her teeth and did not say anything. Her face was full of humiliation and unwillingness. Nian Yuxian did not want her to answer. After she finished speaking, she pulled out her sword and kicked Yu Huajin in the back. Yu Huajin's body was knocked forward. Zhao Chen quickly caught her and looked up. In his field of vision, there was only a stream of light that was rapidly disappearing into the distance. "Junior sister, how are you?" Zhao Chen hurriedly asked. Yu Huajin opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her neck tilted and she stopped moving. Zhao Chen was shocked and hurriedly investigated, discovering that Yu Huajin wasn't dead, but had simply fainted due to anger. Zhao Chen guessed that she had been humiliated. She was a dignified ninth-order divine sea realm cultivator, yet she had been attacked and threatened without any means to counterattack. How could the proud and arrogant Yu Huajin possibly accept this? Her injuries were not optimistic. Clearly, the thought Moon Immortal had done something after stabbing her. It looked like a simple piercing wound, but her internal organs were in a mess. Even if Yu Huajin had been at her peak, it would have taken her at least 2 months to recover from such an injury, let alone now that her qi and blood had dropped. He was no longer the same as before. Her life was indeed not in danger, but it would take her at least half a year to recover from such an injury. Zhao Chen sighed in his heart. Although Nian Yuxian had gone a bit overboard, this matter really couldn't be blamed on her. Just as Nian Yuxian had said, this strong-willed junior apprentice sister had thoughts that she shouldn't have. Naturally, she had to teach her a lesson. Although he could persuade her once, it was impossible for him to keep an eye on Yu Huajin. With his understanding of her, even if he managed to persuade her to go back this time, she would still find another opportunity. To some extent, this might be the best outcome. In the current situation, Lu Ye absolutely could not be touched. If he really did, no one would be able to save Yu Huajin. Just like how the thought Moon Immortal would not really kill Yu Huajin, if she really did, there would be no place for her in the vast Grand Heaven Alliance. Today's matter would end here. Yu Huajin had suffered a loss in silence. She would not spread it around, and she would keep her mouth shut. She believed that the thought Moon Immortal would not mention it to anyone. Carrying Yu Huajin and urging his spiritual power to help her suppress her injuries, Zhao Chen flew into the air. He still had to find a medical cultivator. Dozens of miles away, the thought Moon Immortal, who had hidden herself, watched this scene quietly. After Zhao Chen disappeared from her sight, she sent a message. Persuaded her to go back. In Grand Heaven City, Tang Yifeng looked at the message from the thought Moon Immortal, and the corner of his eyes twitched slightly. Although the thought Moon Immortal used the word persuade, he understood that the thought Moon Immortal would not use such a gentle method. The other party's way of persuading her to go back should be very fierce. Lu Yi appeared at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass to help the soldiers guarding the pass. He also worked together with Li Taibai of the Myriad Devil Ridge to kill the big worm. All of them displayed an extremely impressive foundation and strength. After that, he was strongly recommended by Elder Wan to temporarily stay at the pass to guard it. However, at this time, the original Shocking Waves Lake Pass's lord, Lu Yueme, died mysteriously. Whether it was Lu Yi or Li Taibai, both of them had a grudge against Lu Yueme. When all the information was put together, it was very fanciful. Gan Wudong had asked Lu Yi about Yu Huajin rushing to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass from Heaven's Gate. It was the same for Zhao Chen. In order to prevent Yu Huajin from making a big mistake, he deliberately came to stop her. How could the sect master not do anything? He could not leave Grand Heaven City for the time being, so he could only send a message to the thought Moon Immortal and thank her for making the trip. Looking at it now, the result was not bad. Lu Yi was completely unaware of these undercurrents. This was the benefit of having someone protecting him from above. There were many hidden dangers that even if he didn't notice, his seniors could still nip them in the bud without anyone noticing. He was very busy now. After the battle, the pass was devastated. Many things had to be dealt with, and they also needed him, the pass master, to make the final decision. Although he had not experienced this, the Dark Moon Forest Pass was experiencing the same thing. With a clone there to observe, he only needed to learn from Lin Yu. Therefore, although it was his first time being the master of a pass, he did things in an orderly manner. He was experienced and prudent. The soldiers below saw this and were quite pleased. After a few days, the post-battle matters at the pass were almost settled. In the main hall, Lu Yi sat upright while Yu Huang and a few other Ninth Order True Lake Realm cultivators stood to the side and reported various things. Lu Yi had a headache listening to them and interrupted them. When the Willow Pass master was still alive, how did these things be dealt with? He did not believe that Lu Yueme would personally take care of these big and small matters. If she really did that, how would he have the time to deal with them? Yu Huang replied, "We also help to deal with them. After dealing with them, we ask the Willow Pass master to review and make the final decision." Lu Yi said, "Then it will be the same as before. How it was before, how it will be in the future. Unless there is something that I have to deal with, there is no need to ask me." Yu Huang and the others looked at each other and respectfully acknowledged. They had a rough understanding of Lu Ye's temperament. It seemed that this newly appointed young Mountain Pass Lord was not the kind of person who was obsessed with power and authority. At the very least, in terms of familiarity with the Mountain Pass, Lu Yi could not compare to them. It would be better for them to handle many things. Following that, Yu Huang took out a jade slip and said, "However, my lord, the resources at the Mountain Pass will need to be personally transferred from Grand Heaven City. The resources used by cultivators for cultivation can be purchased from the Tianji Treasure House with merit points. However, the public resources at the pass will need to be transferred by the State Guard. Other things aside, there were so many defensive fortifications that needed to be repaired. The damaged spirit arrays and the spirit artifacts placed in the array cores could not be paid by the soldiers themselves. It did not make sense. This required Lu Yi to personally apply for it from Grand Sky City. The others did not have the authority to do so. Lu Yi took the list and checked it. He frowned slightly. Isn't this a little too little? Although he did not know how many resources were needed at the pass, the list was very short. The types and quantities listed on the list were not many. Yu Huang said, "It is a little too little, but it should be enough." "How can that be? We need to be a little wealthy to be able to deal with some unexpected situations." Lu Yi threw the jade scroll back, "Add some more things. Triple, no, quintuple." The few true lake stage cultivators looked at him in shock. This was still applying for resources? This was robbery. Yu Huang said carefully, "My lord, it's like this. Now that there are frequent battles, all the passes are short on resources. Even if we apply like this, the state guards may not be able to provide it. So what if the state guards do not give it to them?" In the end, he still ended up losing face. Also, there was something that Yu Huang did not tell Lu Yi. That was, when Lu Yueme was alive, she also applied like this. However, because Lu Yueme had connections at Heaven's Gate, she could often use her private authority to obtain some subsidies from Heaven's Gate. Lu Ye's cultivation level was much lower than Lu Yueme's. He did not have any connections at Heaven's Gate. It was already good enough that the resources applied for in the Jade Scroll were approved. How could he expect more? Lu Yi said, "This is like doing business. We raise the price and the other side will pay. Whether we apply or not is our business." Yu Huang and the others looked at each other. This was the first time they heard of Yanluan. They were speechless for a moment. "Is there anything else?" Lu Yi asked. Everyone shook their heads. Originally, there were many things that needed to be reported. However, since Lu Yi had said that and was willing to give up his authority, there was no need to report anymore. They could handle it themselves. "Then that's it. You may leave." Lu Yi waved his hand and the few of them left respectfully. Walking out of the hall, someone asked worriedly, "Brother Yu, this list of resources, are we really going to follow the Pass Lord's idea?" Yu Huang said, "Since my lord has said so, we can only follow his idea." The person said, "I'm just afraid that we won't be able to approve it. When that happens, it will definitely delay the repair of the fortifications. The military supply department is full of Pai Xiu. They won't be easy to talk to. If we really leave a bad impression on them, it will be troublesome to apply for resources in the future." Chapter 1088. After all, this was the new Pass Master's first order. They couldn't refute it and could only follow his instructions. However, in their opinion, the new Pass Master was going to be rejected. How could it be so easy to apply for supplies from the Quartermaster Division? Even if there were no wars in the past, every application for supplies would be discounted, not to mention now that there were wars everywhere. This was good too. It would allow the new Pass Master to adapt to the Quartermaster Division's style faster. He wouldn't be so rash in the future. It was a good thing to be young and impetuous, but one had to conform to the general trend. Thus, they hurriedly drafted a new list and reported it to Lu Yi. Through Lu Ye's request, it was passed to the Quartermaster Division in Vast Sky City. Next, they just had to wait. No matter how fast the supplies were delivered, it would still take some time. If it was in the past, just the approval process alone would take several days. Those guys in the quartermaster division had always been known for being stingy. They couldn't wait to keep everything in the treasury. In the inner hall of Lu Ye's quarters, a golden vortex slowly rotated. Yi and Hu Po's figures were immersed in rich and pure spiritual power as they cultivated. In the 2 years that Lu Yi wasn't around, the two of them relied on Yi's battle merits to cultivate. Occasionally, they would receive some assistance from the sect master. This was how they were able to maintain a steady improvement in their strength. Now that Lu Yi had returned, they didn't have to worry about the golden spirit lot anymore. Lu Yi now had so much battle merits that he couldn't spend them all. The golden spirit lot could be maintained at all times, allowing the spirit and tiger to cultivate to their heart's content and improve themselves. Since the beginning, Yi and Hu Po had been inseparable from him. It was easy for him to improve his cultivation now. Their strength was constantly increasing, so Yi and Hu Po's cultivation had to improve as soon as possible. Otherwise, one day, the spirit and tiger wouldn't be able to keep up with his progress. Lu Yi didn't cultivate. Instead, he set up a transportation array. At the same time, over at the Dark Moon Forest Pass, his clone was doing the same thing. It had been a long time since he set up a transportation array. Lu Yi wasn't sure how far his array could reach with his current cultivation. If it couldn't reach 1,000 miles, then the array wouldn't be effective. Because the two arrays couldn't be connected, it naturally couldn't be used. If it could be achieved, then many things would become simple in the future. Not to mention other things, he was now shouldering the task of refining the explosive fire spirit rock and the twin chi-linked branches array disk. How could the efficiency of refining by himself be higher than the efficiency of refining by himself and his doppelgangers? If this was the case, then the efficiency of refining explosive fire spirit stones and array disks would increase exponentially. Moreover, when he advanced in the future, he wouldn't have to find a place to meet up in the wild. It would save him some time on the road, and he wouldn't have to worry about being followed and attacked by some fellows with ill intentions. Just like a few days ago, if he had used the teleportation formation to send his doppelganger directly to his main body, Lu Yueme wouldn't have discovered his whereabouts, and she wouldn't have discovered the secret of his doppelganger. It was just that Lu Yi hadn't thought of this at the time. Furthermore, condensing a new clone wasn't too complicated a matter in the first place. In the end, Lu Yueme had secretly followed him, causing all sorts of subsequent events. Although he hadn't set up a teleportation array for a long time, his skills weren't rusty. After a short while, the two arrays were completed. If two different cultivators were to set up these magic arrays, they would naturally not be able to link the two magic arrays together. However, strictly speaking, the main body and the clone were the same person. Thus, there was no such concern when setting up two magic arrays. Now, it all depended on whether there was a problem with the distance. Lu Ye's main body urged the power of the array and spread out his divine sense. As the array hummed, the other array 1,000 kilometers away resonated with it. It works. Moreover, he felt that the distance between the two arrays wasn't the limit. In other words, with his current second-order Divine Sea Realm cultivation, the teleportation array he set up could cover more than 1,000 kilometers. As for how far the limit was, that would require some verification. Lu Ye's main body stood in the array and poured his spiritual energy into it. The space around him distorted, and he instantly disappeared. When his vision returned, he had already arrived at the residence of his doppelganger in Dark Moon Forest Pass. He pushed open the door and walked out leisurely. He wandered around Dark Moon Forest Pass. This place was also busy with the aftermath of the battle, but because Lin Yu was personally presiding over it, his doppelganger seemed to have nothing to do. Lu Yi followed Lin Yu's aura and flew to a section of the city wall. Lin Yu turned her head and smiled. "Junior brother Tai Bai." Lu Yi nodded and stood beside her, casually asking, "How is senior sister Lin's injury?" Lin Yu had been injured during the battle against the insect tide, but looking at her current condition, she should be fine. It's just a minor injury, Lin Yu replied. Junior brother has worked hard in the battle and should be resting more. Why did you run out here? After the battle a few days ago, when the doppelganger and the main body joined forces to kill the giant insect, Lin Yu obviously attached more importance to the doppelganger. She was very optimistic about Li Tai Bai. At first, she thought he was a character comparable to Lu Ye, but now, she thought he was comparable to Feng Wujiang. However, she didn't have a clear understanding of the doppelganger's strength before, and only after witnessing that battle did she truly realize the depth of Li Tai Bai's heritage. This was also the reason why, even though she was injured and there were many trivial matters to attend to at the mountain pass, she didn't send her doppelganger out. In her opinion, Li Tai Bai was now focused on improving himself and shouldn't be disturbed by trivial matters. The stronger Li Tai Bai was, the stronger the defense of the mountain pass would be. In just a few months, Li Tai Bai had broken through to the First Order Divine Sea Realm, and in a few years, he might even surpass her in terms of cultivation. Such a person was destined to achieve great things in the future. The better she treated him now, the more benefits she would receive in the future. I was bored, so I came out to have a look. Is there anything I can help with? Lu Yi asked. No need, junior brother can go cultivate. I'll handle the matters at the mountain pass. Lu Yi took this opportunity to leave. Returning to his residence, Yang Kai left some fire spirit stones and materials for refining array discs for his doppelganger before returning to Shocking Waves Lake Pass through the transmission array. Sitting cross-legged, Yang Kai took out an item while cultivating. It was the Tyrant Saber Art inheritance from Soaring Dragon Realm. Back then, Lu Yi had given this item to his third senior brother Shao Xing, so that he could comprehend the Tyrant Saber Art. A few days ago, Lu Yi had rushed to Red River City for two reasons. One was to meet the members of Team D9, and two was to retrieve this item. The Tyrant Saber Art inheritance consisted of 3 saber techniques. Lu Yi had comprehended the first when he was in the Cloud River Realm, the second, Crescent Moon, when he was in the True Lake Realm. However, he couldn't see the third saber technique clearly no matter how hard he tried. At that time, he had guessed that only Divine Sea Realm cultivators were qualified to comprehend it. Now that he had broken through to the Divine Sea Realm, it was naturally time to comprehend this last saber technique. Immersing himself in it, Yang Kai felt as if he was in the starry sky, but unlike the previous 2 times, there was no one practicing saber techniques in front of him this time. Instead, there was a bright sun shining in front of him, so bright that he couldn't open his eyes. But when Lu Yi looked carefully, he was surprised to find that it wasn't a sun at all, but a gathering of sharp saber light. The sun suddenly bloomed like a lotus flower, sweeping out in all directions as an incomparably sharp saber intent swept out. Lu Ye's immersed mind melted like a snowflake under the scorching sun. Lu Yi opened his eyes as many comprehensions appeared in his mind. On a certain section of Shocking Waves Lake Pass's city wall, Yu Huang was doing his daily patrol. After several days of cleaning up, there were no longer any traces of the battle at the pass, but many of the fortifications still needed to be repaired. This couldn't be rushed. Just as he was about to finish, he suddenly sensed something and turned his head to look in a certain direction. 2 streams of light were rapidly approaching, one of which had the aura of a 5th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Yu Huang hurriedly looked over and soon understood who these people were. So fast. Thinking so, Yu Huang leapt out to meet them. A moment later, the 2 streams of light arrived in front of Yu Huang, revealing 2 figures. One of them was a familiar face, Manager Fu Yao of the Quartermaster Division, but Yu Huang didn't recognize the other. However, Fu Yao was only a True Lake Realm 8th Order cultivator and shouldered the heavy responsibility of transporting supplies to various mountain passes. At this time, it wasn't strange for a Divine Sea Realm cultivator to accompany him. Yu Huang just didn't know what position this divine sea realm cultivator had been transferred from. Manager Fu. Yu Huang cupped his fists and saluted. Although his cultivation was higher than the other parties, the people of the Quartermaster Division had always been arrogant and couldn't be neglected. Fu Yao nodded lightly and smiled. So it's brother Yu, long time no see. Yu Huang was surprised because every time Manager Fu came to deliver supplies in the past, he had never given him any face. This had nothing to do with personal character, but rather with the people of the Quartermaster Division. No matter who it was, if they wanted to take something from the Quartermaster Division, they would have to show a cold face. This was what Manager Fu did, so there was nothing wrong with him. But today, he was greeting him with a smile. Did the sun rise from the west? Manager Fu must be tired from the journey, Yu Huang said carefully before turning to the Fifth Order Divine Sea Realm Cultivator. This sir is, Fu Yao explained. Sir Lu was assigned by the State Guard to accompany me in transporting supplies. Yu Huang saluted again. The Divine Sea Realm Cultivator surnamed Lu just nodded lightly and didn't say anything. Where's Past Master Lu? Why don't I see him? Fu Yao asked. Yu Huang cursed in his heart. He had forgotten to inform his past master that the quartermaster had arrived. It was only reasonable for him to come out and greet him. If they had a good relationship, it would be easier for him to request supplies from the Quartermaster Division in the future. Thinking quickly, Yu Huang explained, Sir Past Master was too tired from the battle a few days ago and has been recuperating for the past few days. Please come inside, I'll go inform Sir Past Master. Fu Yao still smiled. That's indeed hard work, I'll have to trouble brother Yu to inform him. Yu Huang was amazed. He felt that Fu Yao's attitude today was a bit off, a bit too friendly. However, Yu Huang didn't know what the problem was, so he could only welcome them inside first before heading to Lu Ye's room. Lu Yi, who was comprehending the third form of the Tyrant Saber, felt the barrier around him being touched and got up to open the door. Seeing Yu Huang standing outside, he asked, Is there a battle? Instinctively, he thought it was another insect attack. Yu Huang replied, It's not a battle, someone from the Quartermaster Division is here. Website's latest domain name, 1. Chapter 1089. Why did someone from the Quartermaster Department come? Lu Yi asked with a frown. He had been studying the third form of the Tyrant Saber technique for the past few days and his mind was filled with that exquisite saber technique. His reaction was a little slow. Yu Huang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Didn't we request for supplies a few days ago, and someone from the Quartermaster Department came to deliver supplies? Only then did Lu Yi react. If that's the case, then you can deal with him. There's no need to report this to me. Yu Huang said, Sir, he came to our territory. As the past master, you have to come out and entertain him. It would be fine if the person didn't mention Lu Yi, but Manager Fu did mention Lu Yi just now. If Lu Yi didn't come out, it would be a little unreasonable. After all, he came to deliver things. Lu Yi didn't understand. Entertain what? He was here to guard the pass and protect the front line of the military province. The Quartermaster Department was in charge of the distribution and transportation of supplies. Everyone had their own duties. What was there to entertain? Yu Huang said with a bitter face, Sir, you don't know. The people from the Quartermaster Department are not to be offended. Lu Yi couldn't help but recall the time when he went to the Quartermaster Department with Qian Wudong's order to get supplies. He went to the Quartermaster Department twice in Haoyan City. Although they didn't deliberately make things difficult for him, they didn't treat him well either. It was as if he was going to cut off the flesh of the Quartermaster Department. He frowned and asked, What's wrong with him? Does he need to find some beautiful and fair female cultivators to accompany him? Yu Huang's expression was embarrassed. He explained, The people from the Quartermaster Department are not people who abuse their position for personal gain. They are just like this. As the saying goes, subordinates follow the example of their superiors. According to my understanding, This is the rule passed down by the quartermaster of the quartermaster department, Shu Yi Chao. Lu Yi frowned. Forget it. Let's go meet him. Yu Huang hurriedly led the way. He didn't forget to remind Lu Yi, there's one more thing that you should be prepared for. The supplies we applied for last time, regardless of the quantity or type, were all too large, so the quartermaster division definitely wouldn't approve all of them. This time, the supplies they brought might only be a small portion, but it's still enough for the mountain pass to use. Sir, please don't think that the quartermaster division is targeting us. The prefecture guards have a large family business, and the quartermaster division has the authority to manage the supplies. It's not easy for them either, so they have to be stingy in everything they do. Otherwise, if the gap widens and their family's assets are emptied, they won't be able to explain themselves to their superiors and subordinates. You're speaking up for them. Lu Yi laughed. Yu Huang sighed. Although it's said that one shouldn't meddle in politics when not in position, this humble one can more or less understand their way of doing things. As the saying goes, they don't smile when meeting people because they're afraid that someone has a close relationship with the people in the quartermaster department and will fill their own pocket. From a certain point of view, the people in the quartermaster department are a little despicable, but they are also people who are loyal to their duties. Lu Yi replied casually and quickly brought Yu Huang to the guest hall. At a glance, he saw the two sitting upright. When they saw Lu Yi arrive, the two stood up together. Lu Yi first cupped his fists to the Fifth Order Divine Sea Cultivator. Greetings, fellow Taoist Lu. He didn't know what the other party's name was, but he learned from Yu Huang that the other party's surname was Lu and that he was the guard in charge sent by the quartermaster department this time. Although he wasn't in charge of this trip, the other party's cultivation was here, so Lu Yi naturally had no problem exchanging pleasantries with him first. The cultivator surnamed Lu looked Lu Yi up and down and smiled with a warm expression. I've heard of fellow Taoist Lu's name a long time ago. Today, I finally get to meet you. The War Province's twin heroes are indeed talented. Lu Yi was stunned for a moment. What War Province's twin heroes? When did I get this title? Since they're the War Province's twin heroes, then who else is it? The cultivator surnamed Lu laughed. Fellow Taoist Lu might not know, but a few days ago, the matter of fellow Taoist working together with fellow Taoist Li Tai Bai of Myriad Demon Ridge to kill many giant insects has been spread out by Senior Brother Wan. Senior Brother Wan said that the battle that day made him feel relaxed and happy. He only felt that time was passing by and that talents were emerging. The War Province's twin heroes are Li Tai Bai and Yu Yi. These twin heroes of the War Province are Senior Brother Wan's affirmation of fellow Taoist and that person from Myriad Demon Ridge. Old Wan really has a big mouth. Lu Yi was speechless. However, when he thought about it carefully, the twin heroes of the War Province were much better than the sect exterminating Yi and the three disasters of the Spirit Stream sect. He said modestly, Elder Wan, you're being too serious. There were many elements of luck in the battle that day, so it's not accurate. The cultivator surnamed Lu said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, don't be so modest. I've always been familiar with Senior Brother Wan, and I've also asked him about the scene that day. I thought that if I were in that situation, it would be difficult for me to perform. Just from this point alone, although fellow Taoist Lu's cultivation base is inferior to mine, if it's a life-and-death battle, I'm definitely not your opponent. Senior Brother Wan has a unique vision and is very accurate in judging people. Since he said that the two of you are the twin heroes of the War Province, he naturally wouldn't be wrong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have strongly recommended fellow Taoist to be in charge of a pass. This time, I took the initiative to come here because I wanted to see the demeanor of the rising talents of our War Province. Today, I've finally fulfilled my long-cherished wish. Since they spoke so politely, Lu Yi could only continue to be modest. Hundreds of barges and thousands of sails compete against each other. Who can say for sure when it comes to cultivation? I ran faster in the first part of the journey, But how would I know that fellow Taoist Lu wouldn't be able to sail in the second part of the journey? The cultivator surnamed Lu laughed and said, Then I'll take advantage of fellow Taoist's auspicious words. Lu Yi then looked at the other true lake stage cultivator. This must be Manager Fu. Fu Yao hurriedly saluted. Manager of the Military Supply Department, Fu Yao greets past Lord Lu. As he spoke, he untied a large pile of storage pouches from his waist and picked out a total of 5 of them. He then handed over 2 jade slips. One of them is the list of materials that the Military Supply Department approved for this Shocking Waves Lake Pass application. The other one is the list of materials that Manager Chow asked me to bring to fellow Taoists. I hope that past Lord Lu can check it in person and verify it before signing for it. Lu Yi nodded slightly and received the 2 jade slip. He first looked at the list of materials that had been applied for. After a while, he nodded his head without batting an eyelid. Following that, he checked the other list. As expected, it was a large amount of fire spirit stones and other materials for refining array disc. Yu Huang watched anxiously from the side, afraid that Lu Yi would fly into a rage because of the wrong number of materials. His worry was not without reason. Lu Ye's age was right and he was in the prime of his youth. He would not be so tactful when doing things. If he really flew into a rage because of the wrong number of materials, he would offend the Military Supply Department. In the future, if the Shocking Waves Lake Pass wanted to apply for any materials allocation, they would only see more cold faces. What comforted him was that Lu Yi did not show any signs of getting angry. After checking the list of materials, he nodded his head and said, There are no problems. How do I sign for it? Fu Yao smiled and said, Past Lord Lu only needs to leave your aura imprint in these 2 jade slips. Lu Yi did the same and returned the 2 jade slips to Fu Yao. Fu Yao took them and said, Now, I can return to the Military Supply Department to report. Past Lord Lu, before I left, Department Head Chow instructed me that if past Lord Lu needs anything in the future, please do not hesitate to inform the Military Supply Department. Anything that can be allocated will be given priority to past Lord Lu's side. When he said this, Lu Yi did not have much of a reaction, but Yu Huang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. If he did not know this Manager Fu, he would have suspected that the other party was from the Military Supply Department. Since when were the people from the Military Supply Department so easy to talk to? Even a stingy rooster would have its feathers plucked. In the beginning, even when Lu Yueme was overseeing the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, she had not been able to build a good relationship with the people from the Military Supply Department. Every time this Manager Fu came to deliver materials, Lu Yueme would personally accompany him to deliver the goods. However, this Manager Fu had always had a businesslike attitude. Although he did not give Lu Yueme any face, he was truly unmoved by force or persuasion. After the goods were delivered, he would not stop for a moment and would immediately leave. What was going on today? This Manager Fu had a smiling face from beginning to end, and now he actually said such words. He had never heard of Chow Yi having any relationship with the Jade Blood sect. Furthermore, a person like Chow Yi would not do anything for personal gain. Then I will thank Department Head Chow in advance. Lu Yi was also confused. Originally, Yu Huang had told him many things in advance, and he had really thought that there would be a shortage of materials from the Military Supply Department and had already mentally prepared himself. But now, it seemed that this was not the case at all. Since this matter is over, we will take our leave first. Fu Yao spoke up. The 2 of you have had a hard journey, why don't you rest here before leaving? Let me do my duty as a host. Fu Yao said, We appreciate past Master Lu's kind intentions, but we have official business to attend to. He patted his waist, which was bulging with storage pouches. Other than the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, I still have 7 or 8 other passes to visit. The allocation of materials is very important and this Fu does not dare to be negligent. Hearing him say this, Lu Yi did not insist and extended his hand in invitation. Then I will send the two of you off. A moment later, after Lu Yi had sent off Fu Yao and Fu Yao, he returned to the guest hall and saw Yu Huang looking at him excitedly with several storage pouches in his hands. My lord, what is your relationship with Department Head Chao? Chao Yi. Lu Yi shook his head. I have only heard of him, but never seen him. Then why were all the materials we applied for approved? Yu Huang held the storage pouches in his hands and felt that they were heavy. He had been ordered to draw up the list of materials for the house application. He was very clear on how many types of materials there were and how much weight each had. It could be said that he was completely asking for an exorbitant price and did not expect the military supply department to approve at all. He even thought that the military supply department would definitely send someone to reprimand him. But now they actually did not give the approval at all. And just now, Fu Yao's attitude towards Lu Yi was still the same, and he even said that Department Head Chao had ordered him to inform the military supply department if he had any needs in the future, and those that could be allocated would be prioritized at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. After being at the pass for so many years, he had never seen the military supply department so considerate. This was the attitude of someone treating their own son. If not for the fact that Lu Yi was a man, Yu Huang would have suspected that he had some unspeakable relationship with Chao Yi. This site's newest domain name, 1. Chapter 1090. In the mortal world, food comes first. We're working hard to resist the insect wave here, so we naturally have to ensure the supply of supplies. What's wrong with that? Lu Yi stepped forward and put away the 2 storage bags containing the fire spirit stones and materials for refining the array disc. After thinking for a while, he asked, Have you tabulated the names of those who died in the previous battle? Yes, the corpses have been transported back to Grand Sky City. Yu Huang replied. Find a way to check if they have any relatives alive. If they do, the mountain pass will provide compensation. Yu Huang was stunned. Compensation? There was no such rule in the past. Although the soldiers were following orders to kill the enemy on the front lines, and there were many dangers, how could there be no risks in the cultivation of cultivators? While the cultivators were killing the enemy here, they were also earning cultivation resources for themselves. If they died in battle, it was because they were not strong enough and not lucky enough. Add this rule in the future. Anyway, the mountain pass won't run out of supplies. You can handle this personally. Yes, Yu Huang replied and bowed deeply. This humble one thanks the mountain pass master for his kindness. Lu Yi waved his hand and took the 2 storage bags. First, he went to the Tianji treasure house and exchanged a batch of golden spirit sticks from the War Merit Pavilion. Then, he returned to his room and cultivated with the help of the spirit sticks while refining the exploding fire spirit stones and the twin chi connecting array disc. With the help of his clone at the Dark Moon Forest Pass, the efficiency was greatly improved. Many trivial matters at the mountain pass were handled by Yu Huang and the other 9th Order True Lake Realm cultivators, so there was no need to trouble Lu Yi. Only when the soldiers encountered some spirit sea realm insects that they couldn't deal with would they send a message to him for support. The days passed peacefully, and 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. After 3 months of almost non-stop cultivation, Lu Ye's cultivation finally broke through to the 3rd Order Divine Sea Realm. He immediately recalled his clone and condensed a new one. Then, he let the clone hang around in front of Lin Yu. Seeing that Li Tai Bai's cultivation had improved again, Lin Yu was naturally overjoyed and relied on him more. With the thorn in his heart, Lu Yi knew that he had to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. Last time, Jiuzhou Tianji had sent him to the blood refining realm, allowing him to see all kinds of things in the blood refining realm with his own eyes. Then, after the blood race had failed to besiege the Jade Blood Holy Land, Jiuzhou Tianji had sent him back. Obviously, Jiuzhou Tianji wanted him to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. Although Tianji wouldn't say anything and basically let Lu Yi figure it out himself, Many things were traceable. For example, why did he send Lu Yi to the blood-refining realm at that time? At that time, the blood race besieged the Jade Blood Holy Land. If it weren't for the twin spirit connecting array disk that Lu Yi contributed, the Holy Land would have been in danger. From this incident, it could be seen that Tianji of the Nine States was willing to protect the human race, regardless of whether it was in the Nine States or the blood-refining realm. Therefore, before the next time the blood race besieged the Blue Blood Holy Land, he had to rush back. Not only did he have to go back alone, but he also had to bring a group of helpers with him. This way, he would have a chance to protect the Blue Blood Holy Land, the only pure land of the human race in the blood-refining world. As for how he was going to return, there was no need for him to think about it. The mysteries of the heavens had their own plans. All he had to do was wait. However, the current situation in the Nine States was turbulent. If the insect plague wasn't eliminated, there would be endless disasters. There was a shortage of manpower everywhere. Where could he find extra helpers to bring back to the blood-refining world? The best situation was naturally to solve the insect plague before he left for the blood-refining world, but could this really be done? Lu Yi had always adhered to the principle of doing his best and leaving the rest to heaven's will. No matter what, he had to do his best. 20 now. His main body was the master of Shocking Waves Lake Pass, and his clone was the Little Pass master of Dark Moon Forest Pass. It could be said that the land within 1,000 kilometers was almost under his control. Not to mention solving the insect plague in the Nine States, it was more important to solve the insect plague in the surrounding 1,000 kilometers first. After 3 months, Lu Yi walked out of his bedroom without Hu Po and Yi. The spirit and tiger had been in retreat during this time. With the constant supply of golden spirit sticks, their cultivations had improved rapidly. With a sweep of his divine perception, he found Yu Huang's location. He gave him a few instructions and asked him to stay at the pass. Then, he soared into the sky and headed north. During these 3 months, when he was cultivating, he had a lot of considerations. He could try a few things. If he could succeed, even if he couldn't solve the insect plague here, stabilizing the situation would not be a problem. In that case, he could take more time to do his own things. Rushing all the way, he quickly arrived at the Dark Moon Forest Pass. He didn't have any intention to hide. Lin Yu sensed him and immediately went to the city wall of the pass. His clone Li Tai-bai followed closely behind. Hovering in the air 1,000 feet away from the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lu Yi glanced over. Although he felt uncomfortable, he still cupped his fists and bowed to his clone. "Brother Tai-bai," his clone returned the greeting. In the eyes of outsiders, the two of them had worked together to fight the enemy before. Now that the name of the two heroes of the military province had been spread out, it was natural for them to address each other in this way. If it were someone else who did this in public, they would have been immediately accused of colluding with the enemy. Lu Yi looked at Lin Yu. Lu Yi of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass greets fellow Taoist Lin. Lin Yu smiled and bowed. "Fellow Taoist Lu, what business do you have here?" "I have something to discuss with fellow Taoist Lin and brother Tai-bai. I wonder if you can come in?" Lin Yu was startled and immediately nodded. "Fellow Taoist Lu, please come in." Lu Yi didn't hesitate. Under the gaze of a group of Wanmo Ridge cultivators, he rushed into the Dark Moon Forest Pass. This was probably the first time a cultivator walked into the enemy's pass so openly since the confrontation between the two camps. Lin Yu sighed with emotion. Young people were really bold. If it was an old Divine Sea Realm cultivator of the Haotian Alliance, they would never walk in like this. But then again, because of the insect plague, the relationship between the two camps had eased a little. Moreover, the two camps were intimately interdependent. She really wouldn't have any bad intentions toward Lu Yi. After a short while, in the guest hall, the host and the guest sat down. A female cultivator served tea and admired the legendary sect destroyer Ye's graceful bearing up close. Lu Yi took a sip of tea. Because his doppelganger had been under Lin Yu's command for half a year, he was quite familiar with her. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Fellow Taoist Lin, our two camps are at the north and south ends of the pass, guarding the front line. Let's not talk about the conflicts in the past for now. Those are the general trend and we can't help it. Right now, we only have a common enemy. Why don't we work together to fight the enemy? Lin Yu asked. How do we work together? The insect race within a 1,000-mile radius basically crawled out from the crack in the middle of our camp. That's the source. So as long as we can seal the source, the insect plague within a 1,000-mile radius will naturally be contained. If we can do that, the soldiers won't have to rush around to kill the insect. You, me, and Brother Tai Bai won't have to go around to support each other. It'll save us a lot of trouble. Lin Yu thought for a while. Fellow Taoist Lu, you mean to deploy troops to deal with the crack? That's right. Lu Yi nodded. That's a good idea. Lin Yu pursed her lips into a smile and said, Truth be told, the higher-ups of Myriad Demon City have considered this as well, but there were many obstacles in their implementation, so they could only give up in the end, and I'll have to ask fellow Taoist Lin to dispel the obstacles. First of all, our camps have been at odds with each other for many years. We both have our own grudges against each other. Now that the insect plague is sweeping through, the relationship between our camps has eased a little. Although no one has made it clear, if the cultivators of our two camps meet in the wild, most of them will just brush past each other without any dispute. However, this is only a coincidence. If we really deploy troops at the crack, the cultivators of our two camps will definitely go to war together. Neither camp will be missing. If we get along with each other day and night, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be any conflicts. Lu Yi nodded. This matter isn't difficult to solve. We just have to give our orders. I believe that the cultivators of our two camps are not people who can't differentiate between green and red. Lin Yu smiled. This matter is indeed easier to solve. However, if we really do that, how are we going to distribute the troops? My Shocking Waves Lake Pass has about 300 soldiers now. We can't possibly pull all of them to the crack. After all, some of them will have to stay behind to guard the pass. The distance between the crack and the pass is hundreds of miles. We don't have enough troops to begin with. Splitting the troops like this is a huge taboo. When the time comes, whether there's a crisis at the crack or at the pass, we won't be able to receive timely support. Lin Yu hurriedly said, What fellow Taoist Lin is thinking is there anything else? If there's a giant insect that the soldiers can't deal with at the crack, what should we do? At least we can stay behind to guard the pass. The other side of the crack doesn't have the geographical advantage of the pass. After all these considerations, although the current defense isn't satisfactory, it's the best way to ensure the safety of the soldiers. It's not rash to send troops to the crack. Lu Yi said, The current method does have its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. There's no one monitoring the crack, so we won't know in time if a giant insect comes out of it. In the past few months, the soldiers have often encountered spirit sea realm insects in the wild. Although they can send a message to me to provide support, it still takes some time. Sometimes, if I'm late, the lives of the soldiers will be in danger. I don't know what the situation is at the pass, but over at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, more than 10 people have died in the past 3 months. The situation at the Dark Moon Forest Pass is actually the same. The cultivators are in groups killing insects in the wild, but if they're unlucky and encounter something difficult to deal with, it's very dangerous. Even if Lin Yu goes to provide support as soon as she receives the news, sometimes she's too late. Back then, Ing Wuji's group was almost wiped out. If Lu Yi didn't show up in time, Lin Yu would only be able to collect their corpses when she arrived. Therefore, sending troops to the crack is the best way to deal with it. As for fellow Taoist Lin's concerns, I can set up a transportation formation at the Dark Moon Forest Pass that leads directly to the crack. This way, if there's danger over there, whether it's fellow Taoist or brother Tai Bai, you can rush over immediately. Also, if there's a transportation formation, the soldiers at the pass and the crack will be able to coordinate with each other. No matter which side is in danger, they'll be able to support each other at any time. The latest domain name of this website. 1. Chapter 1091. There's one more thing. As fellow Taoist mentioned, it's true that there are many defensive structures at the mountain pass, but we can set up many formations at the fissures in the ground. This way, even if a giant insect really does appear, we can use the power of the formations to hold it back for a while. At that time, the three of us can go over to support at any time. Lu Yi spoke frankly and with assurance. He had studied all of the problems that Lin Yu mentioned. It was actually very simple to solve them. A transportation formation could perfectly solve most of Lin Yu's worries. In this world, Lu Yi was not the only one who could set up a transportation formation. There were many formation cultivators in the 9 regions, especially those in the spirit ocean realm. Although setting up a transportation formation was not easy for them, it was not difficult to accomplish. The reason why there was no precedent of 2 camps joining hands to set up a fissures in the ground was because there was no good communication bridge. Lu Yi alone, there were so many 9 cultivators, especially those in the spirit ocean realm. Although setting up a transportation formation was not easy for them, it was not difficult to accomplish. The reason why there was no precedent of 2 camps joining hands to set up a fissures in the ground was because there was no good communication bridge. Not every mountain pass master was like Lu Shi, who openly ran to the enemy's mountain pass and sat down to discuss things with the enemy's mountain pass master. Lu Yi felt that if this matter could be done, it would be a good start. With the precedent of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass joining hands to defend against the enemy, the other mountain passes could follow suit. At that time, the pressure on the front lines would be reduced by a lot, and the various state guards would be able to transfer more people to deal with the problems in their own territories. With this kind of snowball rolling, even if it did not completely solve the problem of the insect plague, stabilizing the situation would not be a problem at all. Lin Yu fell into deep thought. Lu Yi did not wait for her to reply. This kind of matter was not easy to answer in person. She definitely had to discuss it with her clone before making a decision. Moreover, since this matter was brought up by him, he naturally had to set an example. He stood up and said, "Fellow Taoist Lin, think about it yourself. However, no matter what fellow Taoist Lin decides, my Shocking Waves Lake Pass will do the same. Today, I came specially to inform fellow Taoist and hope to receive fellow Taoist's help." Lu Yi left. Lin Yu couldn't make up her mind. Her doppelganger, Li Tai Bai, naturally didn't know what to do. Thus, she instigated, "I've seen that Lu Ye is a straightforward and upright person. I don't think he has any selfish motives for this suggestion. If this matter really works out, it'll be beneficial to both you and the soldiers." Lin Yu said, "Of course I know that, but there has never been a precedent." Li Tai Bai said, "If Shiji did it, wouldn't there be a precedent? If senior sister really can't make up her mind, then let's wait and see if Lu Ye is all talk and no action. If he really does so, then it won't be too late for us to join in." Lin Yu agreed, "That's good too." Yang Kai couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Lu Ye's cultivation speed was actually on par with his junior brother Tai Bai's, and he had already reached the 3rd Order Divine Sea Realm. She couldn't believe it. When Li Tai Bai reached the 3rd Order Divine Sea Realm, she thought that he would be able to leave Lu Ye behind, but it turned out that their cultivation speed was actually the same. A moment later, in the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, Lu Yi gathered his subordinate. There weren't many cultivators at the pass, just like in the Dark Moon Forest Pass, with only 300 people. In the past, it would have been impossible for there to be so few people, but too many people had been transferred away. There were only so many soldiers left. After all, this place was just the front line of the confrontation between the 2 camps. Even if it was really captured by the insect race, it wouldn't have much of an impact. It wasn't like the War Province, where there were many mortal cities that needed to be strictly guarded. Lu Yi had been here for several months, but this was the first time he had gathered all the cultivators. For a moment, many of the soldiers didn't know what was going on. They only had a vague feeling that their past master was about to make a big move, so they were looking forward to it. On the central field of the pass, Lu Yi looked around. Although he was young, he had a majestic aura. Although he was appointed as the mountain pass master at the last minute, the 300 soldiers still respected him because of the great battle several months ago. Moreover, they had interacted with each other for several months, so the 300 soldiers still respected him quite a bit. Not to mention other things, just the fact that the mountain pass provided funds to compensate the families of the cultivators who died in battle was an unprecedented precedent, so it was very popular. The first thing a cultivator needed to do was to cultivate. Chapter 1090, Pass Master joining hands fighting for a future for themselves, but many people had exhausted their potential and had no possibility of further improvement. Naturally, they were thinking about their descendants and relatives. In the past, when they fought against the insect race, they were inevitably restrained, fearing that they would encounter an accident. But now they were much braver because even if they unfortunately died in battle, there would be a large amount of compensation left for their descendants. Yu Huang stepped out, clasped his fists, and said, "My lord, the 313 people of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass are all present. Please give your orders, my lord." Lu Yi clasped his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. "I want to deploy soldiers to the fissure 250 miles away to kill the insect race there, so I need all of you to work together. Yu Huang, choose 50 people to stay behind and hold the fort. The others follow me." "Yes," Yu Huang answered and flew into the air. He looked at the crowd. "Is there anyone who is willing to stay behind and hold the fort?" The group of people were all laughing and joking, but no one took the initiative to volunteer. Yu Huang was naturally familiar with their temperament. Usually, the soldiers would very actively go out to kill the insect race and earn battle merit. There were also people who had thought about the fissure, but because they were alone, they didn't dare to take the risk. Now that Lu Yi was personally leading the troops, this was a rare opportunity, so how could they miss it? He reprimanded. "The pass master is watching, so all of you better be self-aware, especially those whose cultivation level is not high." Immediately, a Cloud River Tear shouted, "So what if our cultivation level is not high? Everyone grows up bit by bit, and we also have to follow the pass master out to kill the insect race." Once he said this, all the Cloud River Tears shouted in agreement. Yu Huang felt a headache coming on, and glared fiercely at the Cloud River Tear who had spoken first. "Then we'll catch them. Whoever catches them will stay behind, and don't blame the heavens and others." Everyone agreed in unison. Yu Huang began to prepare, and Lu Yi didn't rush him. After a short while, Yu Huang finished his preparations, and walked over with a large jar in his arms. He shouted, "Line up and come forward, one person each. Once caught, leave no regrets." The many cultivators consciously lined up in 2 lines, and stepped forward one by one. The cultivators who were caught to stay behind couldn't help but look bitter, but they couldn't blame others. Those who were caught to go out with them were naturally jubilant. When everything was ready, Lu Yi called out and took the lead to fly out, a large group of flowing lights following behind him. Wherever they passed, they would occasionally encounter the insect race, and all of them were killed on the spot. The distance of 250 miles took a full 4 hours to reach, mainly to take care of those Cloud River Tear cultivators in the group. When they reached the fissure, the cultivators immediately formed into groups, and with the help of the connected chi formation plate, they cleared the insect race, exterminating the insects that were crawling out of the cracks in the ground. Lu Yi didn't interfere. Instead, he chose a suitable location nearby to set up a teleportation array. Before setting off, He had already left a corresponding teleportation formation in the heavenly secret hall at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. If he set up another one here, it would be able to respond to it from afar. In this way, even if there were any changes in the ground, the soldiers could still return to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass through the teleportation formation. Thus, the transfer formation had to be set up as soon as possible. In the vicinity of the fissure, spiritual power surged, and the soldiers killed endlessly, continuously luring out more insect race. This side was in full swing, and very soon, the nearby cultivators of the Myriad Demon's Ridge were attracted over. They watched from afar, and transmitted what they saw back to the Dark Moon Forest Pass. When Lin Yu received the news, she was also very surprised. Lu Ye was really swift and decisive. He had just given her a heads-up, and now he had started to act. It looked like he really wasn't just saying it casually, but had made up his mind to do so. She found Li Tai by, and told him the news she had received. The clone said, "Senior sister, if you're worried, I'll go take a look?" Lin Yu shook her head. "You stay here. I'll go take a look myself." She wasn't afraid that Lu Ye would lie to her. In this situation, what good would it do to lie to her? However, she had to investigate the situation on the spot to confirm Lu Ye's previous proposal. If it was possible, then joining the Dark Moon Forest Pass naturally wouldn't be a problem. If it wasn't possible, then she wouldn't joke around with the lives of her soldiers. Not long after, Lu Ye, who had just finished setting up the transfer formation, sensed Lin Yu's aura. She didn't avoid arousing suspicion and directly landed beside Lu Ye. Looking at the transfer formation in front of her, she praised, "I've long heard that fellow Taoist Lu is quite accomplished in the Tao of formations. Seeing you today, you really live up to your reputation." As far as she knew, among the many formations, setting up a transfer formation was the most difficult because of the void at the core. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations join hands. The Void Spirit Rune was very complicated. Even many Divine Sea Realm formation cultivators might not be able to set up a transfer formation. However, Lu Ye was able to set one up in such a short time. This showed how profound his Tao of formations was. "Fellow Taoist Lin, you flatter me." Lu Ye smiled. "I'm a bit busy here for now. Fellow Taoist Lin, please help yourself." With that said, he had Yu Huang find someone to guard the formation. Then, he ran to set up other formations near the fissure. He built defensive fortifications. Lin Yu quietly followed beside him. Seeing him busy, she would occasionally help relieve the pressure on the cultivators of the Startling Waves Lake Pass. One by one, the formations were set up. Each formation was guarded by someone. With the help of the formations, the pressure on this side to defend against the insectoids gradually decreased. Lu Ye worked for a long time before saying, "Fellow Taoist Lin, what do you think?" To be honest, with the strength of my Startling Waves Lake Pass, although there's no need to worry about defending the fissure, we can't be too careful. If the insectoids are slightly stronger, it'll be very difficult to defend this side, so we really need your pass alliance. Fellow Taoist Lin is a sensible person. In the current situation, only by working together can we stabilize the situation. This is also for the sake of our soldiers. Seeing his sincerity, Lin Yu nodded and said, "I naturally understand what fellow Taoist Lu is saying. If your Startling Waves Lake Pass can do this, my Dark Moon Forest Pass also doesn't want to be behind others. I'll go back and gather people and bring them over to help." "That's good. However, fellow Taoist Lu, there's something I don't understand. I'd like to ask fellow Taoist for guidance." "Fellow Taoist Lin, just say it. I see that the soldiers of your pass are able to form a formation to defend against the enemy. This shouldn't be a coincidence, right? Did they borrow some external force?" Please enter the latest update in your browser to view Chapter 1090. Startling Waves Join Hands.